Can you be my husband? 4 words that shattered everything Evan Brooks thought he knew about his broken life. On Christmas night, sitting alone in a crowded restaurant after being abandoned by yet another woman who couldn't accept his daughter, Evan had finally accepted his fate. He would always be too damaged, too complicated, too much. Then a stranger with eyes that held their own kind of pain asked him the impossible question. She couldn't have children. He had one no one wanted, 2 broken halves, one impossible offer, and a choice that would change everything. If you're curious to see how this impossible night transforms into something beautiful, stay with me until the end. And please, hit that like button and drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I love seeing how far these stories travel. The snow had been falling since noon, turning Chicago into something from a postcard, the kind that made people believe in magic and fresh starts. Evan Brooks didn't believe in either anymore. He sat at table 14 in Marcello's, an Italian restaurant that tried too hard to be romantic with its dim lighting and candles that flickered in red glass holders. The white tablecloth seemed to mock him with its pristine cleanliness, 2 place settings arranged with hopeful symmetry. One set of silverware remained untouched, the water glass still full, the napkin folded into some elaborate shape he couldn't identify. His date had left 17 minutes ago. Evan checked his phone again, though he knew there would be nothing. Rebecca, bright smile in her profile photo, loves adventure and spontaneity in her bio, had made it exactly 12 minutes into their conversation before the truth came out. He had a daughter, a 5-year-old daughter, and just like that, the brightness had drained from her face, replaced by something that looked uncomfortably like pity mixed with relief. "I'm so sorry," she'd said, already gathering her purse. I'm not ready for that kind of commitment. You understand, right? It's nothing personal." Except it was personal. It was the most personal rejection possible. She'd left him sitting there, half risen from his chair in some pathetic attempt at chivalry, while other diners pretended not to notice. He'd lowered himself back down slowly, feeling the weight of their sidelong glances, their whispered conversations. The waiter had approached twice, hovering with apologetic uncertainty, before Evan finally ordered something he had no intention of eating. Now the pasta sat congealing on his plate, and Evan stared at it like it held answers to questions he was afraid to ask. This was the 4th time, 4th date, 4th explanation, 4th expression of polite horror followed by a swift exit. The pattern had become predictable enough that he should have developed immunity to it by now. He hadn't. "More wine, sir?" The waiter appeared at his elbow, young enough that Evan envied him, old enough to deliver the question without judgment. "No, thank you. Just the check." "Of course. I'll bring it right over." Evan pulled out his phone again, this time opening his photo gallery. Mia smiled up at him from the screen, gap-toothed and glorious, covered in paint from her afternoon art session with his sister. She'd been making him a Christmas present, Claire had texted. Something special. A surprise. His chest tightened. Mia didn't know he'd gone on another date. She didn't know about any of them. At 5 years old, she still believed her daddy was the strongest, bravest man in the world. Someone who could fix anything, defeat any monster, make everything right with a hug and her favorite bedtime story. She didn't know that her existence had become a deal breaker, a red flag, a complication that sent women running before they'd even learned his daughter's name. The guilt was familiar now, a constant companion that whispered in the quiet moments, "You're failing her. She deserves better. You're not enough." Sarah would have known what to do. Sarah had always known what to do, but Sarah had been gone for 3 years, taken by a drunk driver on an ordinary Tuesday afternoon, and Evan was still learning how to breathe around the absence she'd left behind. Some days were easier than others. Tonight was not one of those days. "Your check, sir." Evan looked up, pulling his wallet from his jacket. The waiter set the small leather folder on the table with practiced discretion. Evan slipped his credit card inside without looking at the total. Money wasn't the issue. Money had never been the issue. The issue was sitting in his chest like a stone, the growing certainty that this was his life now. Raising Mia alone, being enough for her while knowing he would never be enough for anyone else, watching other families, whole families, and feeling like an imposter, a broken thing pretending at normalcy. He signed the receipt with a hand that had steadied through sheer force of will, added a generous tip because the waiter didn't deserve to suffer for Evan's tragedy, and stood. The restaurant seemed too loud suddenly, too bright, too full of couples leaning close and laughing at shared jokes. He needed to leave, needed to get back to Claire's apartment where Mia was probably already asleep, curled around her stuffed elephant, dreaming of Christmas morning. Evan had almost reached the door when the voice stopped him. "Excuse me." He turned, expecting the waiter with a forgotten credit card, or perhaps another diner with misplaced sympathy. Instead, he found a woman standing 3 feet away, hands clasped in front of her with careful composure. She wore a charcoal gray suit that looked expensive without being flashy, her dark hair pulled back in a style that was elegant and severe. Everything about her radiated control, from her perfect posture to her steady gaze. "Can I help you?" Evan asked, confusion replacing misery for the moment. The woman studied him with an intensity that made him want to look away. She seemed to be weighing something, calculating odds, making a decision that carried weight he couldn't begin to understand. When she finally spoke, her voice was quiet, but absolutely certain. "Can you be my husband?" The restaurant noise faded to white static. Evan stared at her, certain he'd misheard, that grief and humiliation had finally driven him to auditory hallucinations. "I'm sorry, what?" "I'm asking if you would consider marrying me." She said it like she was proposing a business merger, calm and collected, though something flickered in her eyes, something that looked almost like desperation. "I realize this is unconventional, potentially insane, but I've been sitting over there for the last hour, and I couldn't help but notice your situation." Heat crawled up Evan's neck. "You were watching me get dumped." "I was observing," she corrected, and somehow that made it worse. "And I heard enough to understand why your date left. She learned you have a child." "That's really none of your business." "You're right. It's not." The woman took a step closer, and Evan caught the faint scent of something subtle and expensive, jasmine maybe, or bergamot. "But I have a proposition that might benefit us both. Could you spare 10 minutes? I promise I'm not insane, though I understand that's exactly what an insane person would say." Evan should have said no. Should have walked out into the snow and driven back to his daughter and forgotten this entire nightmare of an evening. But something in the woman's eyes held him there, a kind of contained panic that he recognized because he saw it in his own mirror every morning. The look of someone drowning who'd learned to smile while going under. 10 minutes, he said. Relief flickered across her face, so brief he almost missed it. "Thank you. I'm Naomi Reed, by the way." She extended her hand, and Evan took it automatically. Her grip was firm, businesslike, but her palm was cold. "Evan Brooks." "A pleasure, Mr. Brooks. Shall we sit?" They returned to table 14, to the scene of Evan's humiliation, and he found himself settling back into his chair with a surreal sense of déjà vu. The waiter appeared immediately, eyebrows raising in poorly concealed surprise, and Naomi ordered coffee for them both without consulting Evan. He didn't object. He was too busy trying to process what was happening. "I should start," Naomi said once the waiter had departed, "by explaining that I'm not actually proposing marriage. Not exactly. Not yet." "Well, that's reassuring." A ghost of a smile touched her lips. "What I'm proposing is a conversation about compatibility, an exploration of whether two people with seemingly opposite problems might find a solution in each other." "I don't understand." The coffee arrived. Naomi waited until the waiter retreated before continuing, her hands wrapped around the cup like she was trying to absorb its warmth. "I overheard your date mention she wasn't ready for that kind of commitment." "She was referring to your daughter?" Evan's jaw tightened. "Yes. And this isn't the first time this has happened." It wasn't a question, but Evan answered anyway. "No, it's not." "I see." Naomi took a sip of her coffee, her expression carefully neutral. "Mr. Brooks." "Evan. I'm going to tell you something I've never told anyone outside my immediate family and legal team. I'm 34 years old. I'm the CEO of Reed Technologies, a company my father built, and that I've spent the last decade expanding. I'm financially secure to the point where money is essentially meaningless, and I cannot have children. The last sentence landed between them like a stone. "I'm sorry," Evan said, because what else could he say? "I'm not telling you this for sympathy. I'm telling you this for context. Naomi set her cup down with careful precision. Do you know what it's like to be valued only for your bank account? To watch men calculate your worth in stock options and real estate? To know that every relationship is transactional, that every person who expresses interest is really interested in what you can provide? No, Evan admitted, I don't. It's exhausting, it's dehumanizing, and it's taught me that most people are fundamentally predictable. They want what benefits them, and they frame it as romance. She met his eyes. But tonight, I watched you get rejected for having someone, that should make you more valuable, not less. I watched you sit here alone on Christmas, and I saw something rare, a person being penalized for caring about someone other than themselves. Evan didn't know how to respond to that. His throat felt tight. So here's my proposition, Naomi continued. You have a daughter that women view as a complication. I have a biological limitation that men view as a deal breaker. We're both exhausted by the dating pool, both tired of being rejected for circumstances beyond our control. Both, I suspect, somewhat desperate for something real. You want to marry me because I have a kid and you can't have one? Evan heard the harshness in his own voice, but couldn't quite soften it. That's your proposal? I become your solution to a problem? No. Naomi's composure cracked slightly, something raw showing through. I'm proposing that we consider becoming each other's solution, that we explore whether two broken halves might make something whole. You don't know anything about me. I know you're a single father who hasn't given up on finding partnership despite repeated rejection. I know you tip well and treat service staff with respect. I know you keep your daughter's picture on your phone's home screen. Those aren't small things. They're not a foundation for marriage. Neither is falling in love with someone who wants you for your money or leaves because you have responsibilities. Naomi leaned forward slightly. I'm not asking you to marry me tomorrow, Evan. I'm asking if you'd be willing to have a conversation about whether this idea, as insane as it sounds, might actually be worth exploring. One conversation, and if at the end of it you think I'm completely mad, we shake hands and never speak again. Evan studied her. In the candlelight, Naomi Reed looked simultaneously powerful and fragile, like expensive porcelain formed into armor. She'd sat in this restaurant alone on Christmas night, just like him. She'd heard his humiliation and responded not with pity, but with something he couldn't quite name. Recognition, maybe. Or solidarity. What would this conversation entail, he asked, surprising himself. Something loosened in Naomi's shoulders. Honesty, primarily. We talk about what we want from life, what we need from a partner, what we can and cannot compromise on. We discuss logistics, expectations, boundaries, and most importantly, we talk about your daughter. Mia, Evan said automatically. Her name is Mia. Mia. Naomi repeated the name like she was tasting it. She would be the most important part of any arrangement. I would never ask you to enter into anything that wasn't in her best interest. You don't know her. You don't know what's in her best interest. You're right, which is why any conversation we have would need to include her eventually. But first, I need to know if you're even open to the possibility, if there's any part of you that thinks this might be worth considering. Was there? Evan wanted to say no, wanted to stand up and walk away from this bizarre conversation and go back to his safe, predictable misery. But something held him in place. The same something that made him keep trying to date even after repeated rejection. A stubborn refusal to accept that his life had to be defined by loss. A desperate hope that maybe, somehow, there was still possibility waiting somewhere. I don't even know if I believe in this, he said quietly. In arranged marriages or marriages of convenience or whatever you'd call this. Neither do I, Naomi admitted. But I believe in being honest about what I need and finding creative solutions to seemingly impossible problems. That's how I've built everything I have. And right now, what I need is a partner who values me for something other than my money and who won't see my inability to have biological children as a failure. And what do you think I need? The question hung between them. Naomi considered it, her gaze never leaving his face. I think you need someone who won't run away from your life. Someone who sees your daughter as an asset, not an obstacle. Someone who understands that love and family don't have to follow traditional patterns to be real. She paused. And maybe someone who's as scared and tired as you are, but willing to try anyway. Evan's breath caught. She'd named something he hadn't wanted to acknowledge, the bone-deep exhaustion of being strong all the time, of carrying everything alone, of pretending he was fine when he was falling apart. The loneliness that had nothing to do with being physically alone and everything to do with having no one to share the weight. "This is insane," he said. "Probably. We don't know each other. Not yet. I have a 5-year-old daughter who's been through enough trauma already. I can't just introduce random people into her life because they have an interesting business proposition." "I would never ask you to," Naomi's voice softened. "If, and this is a significant if we decided to explore this further, we'd take it slowly. We'd get to know each other. We'd be thoughtful and deliberate about when and how your daughter becomes involved. This isn't about rushing into anything. It's about being open to possibility." Evan wanted to say no. Every rational part of his brain screamed that this was a terrible idea, that he should leave immediately, that this woman was either crazy or playing some elaborate game he couldn't see. But the irrational parts, the parts that had made him keep trying to date, keep hoping, keep believing that maybe he deserved something more than resigned loneliness, those parts whispered something different. What did he have to lose? Another humiliating evening? He'd already had that. His dignity? Pretty sure that was already in pieces on the floor. The worst had already happened tonight. Maybe the universe was giving him permission to try something different. "One conversation," he heard himself say. "A real one, where we're both completely honest." Naomi's shoulders dropped half an inch, relief evident. "One conversation, complete honesty. When?" "Not tonight. I need to get back to Mia, and I need to think about this when I'm not—" He gestured vaguely at the restaurant, at himself, at the entire catastrophe of the evening. "Of course. Tomorrow? Coffee?" "Tomorrow is Christmas." "Oh." For the first time, Naomi looked uncertain. "Right. Of course. The day after?" "The day after Christmas. Coffee." Evan pulled out his phone. "I'll need your number." They exchanged information, the transaction oddly formal given the surreal nature of their conversation. Naomi's business card appeared from somewhere, thick and expensive, embossed with elegant lettering. Naomi Reed, CEO, Reed Technologies. Her personal number was written on the back in precise handwriting. "Thank you," Naomi said as Evan stood, "for not immediately dismissing this, for being willing to consider it." "I haven't agreed to anything except coffee." "I know, but that's more than I had an hour ago." Evan studied her one more time. In the candlelight, Naomi Reed looked less like a powerful CEO and more like a person carrying her own impossible weight, her own invisible scars. Maybe that's what had made him say yes. The recognition that everyone was fighting battles no one else could see. That behind the power suits and composed expressions, they were all just trying to find a way through. "December 26th, he said. 10 a.m. There's a coffee shop near my apartment, The Daily Grind. Do you know it? I'll find it. Bring questions, real ones." A genuine smile crossed Naomi's face, brief but transformative. "You too." Evan left the restaurant for the second time that night, but everything felt different. The snow was still falling, Chicago still looked like a postcard, but now there was something else threading through his confusion and exhaustion. Curiosity. And underneath that, so faint he almost didn't recognize it, something that might have been hope. His phone buzzed as he reached his car. A text from Claire. "Mia's asleep, but she made you check the tree first thing when you get here. Fair warning, it's covered in glitter, so much glitter. Bring wine." Evan smiled despite everything and typed back, "On my way, save me from the glitter." But as he started the car, his eyes drifted to the business card sitting on his dashboard. Naomi Reed, CEO. A woman who'd sat alone on Christmas night and asked him an impossible question that had somehow bypassed all his defenses and landed somewhere vulnerable. He didn't know if this was the stupidest thing he'd ever considered or the bravest. He didn't know if Naomi Reed was his worst decision waiting to happen or something else entirely. But for the first time in 3 years, he was curious enough to find out. The drive to Claire's apartment took 20 minutes through snow-quiet streets. Evan spent the time mentally rehearsing how he'd explain this to his sister, then abandoning each attempt as inadequate. How did you tell someone you'd been propositioned by a stranger in a restaurant? How did you explain that you'd said yes to coffee without sounding like you'd lost your mind? Claire's apartment building rose from the snow, warm light spilling from windows, wreaths on every door. Evan parked and sat for a moment, gathering himself. Inside, Mia would be asleep, dreaming of Christmas morning. Inside, his sister would have wine and questions and probably some sisterly lecture about not giving up on dating. Inside was his real life, the one that didn't include impossible propositions from beautiful strangers. But in his pocket, Naomi Reed's business card felt heavier than it should. He climbed the stairs to Claire's third-floor apartment, knocked softly. His sister opened immediately, already in pajamas, her hair piled in a messy bun. "Well?" Claire demanded, pulling him inside. "How bad was it?" "Define bad." "Oh no, that bad?" She steered him toward the kitchen where 2 wine glasses waited. "Talk." Evan collapsed into a chair, accepted the wine, and tried to figure out where to start. "She left after 12 minutes. Jesus, Evan. Found out about Mia and just left. Said she wasn't ready for that kind of commitment." Claire's expression cycled through anger, sympathy, and resignation. "I'm sorry. She's an idiot. They're all idiots." "Maybe I'm the idiot for thinking this would work." Evan took a long drink of wine. "Maybe I should just accept that this is my life now. Me and Mia, that's enough." "Bullshit. You deserve partnership. You deserve someone who sees Mia as a blessing, not a burden." "That's a nice thought. Not sure that person exists." Claire opened her mouth to argue, then paused, studying his face. "Wait, something else happened. You've got that look." "What look?" "That look you get when you're processing something weird. Spill." Evan sighed. There was no hiding anything from Claire. They'd been too close for too long, survived too much together. "After my date left, this woman approached me. A stranger." "Oh God, please tell me this isn't going where I think it's going." "Probably worse. She asked me to marry her." The wine glass froze halfway to Claire's lips. "I'm sorry, what?" "Not exactly. She asked if I would consider marrying her, as like a solution to our mutual problems." "Evan, tell me you're joking." "I wish I was." He pulled out Naomi's business card, slid it across the table. Claire picked it up, eyes widening as she read. "Reed Technologies? Evan, I've heard of this company. They're huge. She's the CEO?" "Apparently." "And she just proposed? To a stranger in a restaurant?" "She overheard my date leaving. She can't have children. She's tired of men who only want her money. I'm tired of women who run from Mia. She thought maybe we could help each other." Claire stared at him. "This is the plot of a romance novel." "This is my life apparently becoming the plot of a romance novel." "What did you say?" "I said yes to coffee." "Evan!" Claire's voice pitched up. "You said yes? To a complete stranger who proposed marriage?" "I said yes to coffee. To one conversation, that's it." "This is insane, completely." "You're actually considering this?" Evan met his sister's eyes. "I don't know. Maybe?" She said something that resonated about being rejected for things we can't control, about being tired of pretending we're not desperate for something real. Claire was quiet for a long moment, turning the business card over in her hands. When she spoke again, her voice was softer. "And you believe her? That she's genuine?" "I don't know what I believe, but there was something in her eyes, Claire, something real. She looked as scared as I felt." Scared people make bad decisions. Scared people also sometimes find courage. Evan leaned forward. "I'm not saying I'm going to marry her. I'm saying I'm going to have coffee and a conversation, and if it's completely insane, I'll walk away. But if there's even a chance that this could work, then what? You marry someone you don't love for practical reasons? Is that worse than being alone forever? Is that worse than Mia growing up thinking she's the reason I'm miserable?" The words hung heavy between them. Claire's expression softened, sympathy replacing concern. "You're not miserable, Evan. I'm not happy either. And you think marrying a stranger will fix that? I think maybe being open to unconventional solutions might lead somewhere better than repeatedly doing the same thing and expecting different results." Evan drained his wine glass. "Or maybe I've completely lost my mind. I'll find out on December 26th. Claire reached across the table, gripping his hand. Just promise me you'll be careful. Promise me you won't do anything that could hurt you or Mia. I promise. And promise me you'll listen to your gut. If something feels wrong, I'll walk away. I swear. She squeezed his hand once more, then released it. Okay. Now go look at your daughter's glitter monstrosity so I can enjoy your suffering. Evan laughed despite everything and followed his sister down the hall to the spare bedroom where Mia slept. The room smelled like strawberries and childhood, stuffed animals crowding every surface. His daughter was curled in the center of the bed, her dark hair spread across the pillow, one hand clutching her stuffed elephant. She was perfect. She was his entire world, and she deserved more than a father who was too scared to try. The Christmas tree in the corner of the room was, as promised, covered in glitter. So much glitter that it seemed to glow in the dim light from the hallway. Paper ornaments hung from every branch, some recognizable, others abstract. And there, right in the center, hung a frame made of popsicle sticks painted red and green. Inside the frame was a drawing. 3 stick figures holding hands. One tall, one small, one medium-sized with long hair. Underneath, in Mia's careful kindergarten handwriting, "My family." 3 figures, not 2. Evan's throat closed. He turned to Claire, who stood in the doorway watching him. "She drew that this afternoon," Claire said quietly. "Told me she was making her Christmas wish come true. That she'd asked Santa for someone to love Daddy so he wouldn't be sad anymore. She knows I'm sad. She's 5, not blind. Kids feel everything, Evan. They just don't always have words for it." Evan looked back at the drawing, at the 3 figures that Mia had colored with careful attention. The tall one was obviously him. The small one was clearly Mia, and the medium-sized one with long hair. His daughter had wished for someone to join their family, had asked Santa, had drawn pictures, had somehow sensed that their family of 2 was missing something essential. And tonight, on Christmas Eve, a stranger had walked into his life and asked the exact question Mia had been answering in her artwork. Coincidence. It had to be coincidence. But Evan found himself touching the popsicle stick frame, tracing the outline of the 3rd figure, and wondering if maybe the universe was paying attention after all. If maybe desperation and hope had collided in that restaurant to create possibility where none had existed before. "I'm meeting her for coffee on the 26th, he told Claire, his voice barely above a whisper. "Just to talk. Just to see." "I know, and I'll watch Mia while you do. What if I'm making a huge mistake? Then you'll survive it. You've survived worse." Claire came to stand beside him, wrapping an arm around his waist. "But maybe this time, try hoping for the best instead of expecting the worst." Evan leaned into his sister's embrace, grateful for her presence, her wisdom, her refusal to let him give up. They stood there together watching Mia sleep, watching the glitter-covered tree cast prismatic light across the room, watching the drawing of 3 stick figures holding hands. Tomorrow was Christmas. Tomorrow, Mia would wake up excited and joyful, and Evan would smile and play Santa and pretend his world hadn't just tilted on its axis. Tomorrow he would be the father she deserved. But the day after tomorrow, he would meet Naomi Reed. He would have the conversation that seemed both impossible and inevitable. He would face his fear and his hope and the terrifying possibility that maybe, just maybe, he deserved more than resignation. His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Thank you again for tonight, for listening, for being willing to try. Sleep well, Evan. Naomi." Evan stared at the message for a long moment, then typed back, "You too. See you December 26th. He added Naomi's contact information to his phone, hesitated over what to label her, then simply entered her name. Tomorrow's problems could wait. Tonight, he had a daughter to watch sleep and a Christmas to prepare for and a heart that was beating just slightly faster than usual. In the hallway, Claire touched his shoulder. "Come on, help me set out Mia's presents. And try not to think too hard about your coffee date with a CEO who proposed marriage in a restaurant." "I'll do my best. That's all any of us can do." They retreated to the living room where shopping bags waited, full of carefully chosen gifts that Mia would tear through in the morning with 5-year-old enthusiasm. Evan helped Claire arrange them under the tree, added the ones he'd brought from his apartment, stepped back to survey their work. It looked good. It looked like Christmas. It looked like love made tangible. But in his pocket, Naomi Reed's business card seemed to pulse with its own strange gravity, and in his mind her question echoed, "Can you be my husband?" Evan didn't know the answer yet, but for the first time in 3 years, he was brave enough to find out. Christmas morning arrived with Mia's squeal of delight echoing through Claire's apartment at precisely 6:47 a.m. Evan had been awake for an hour already, lying in the pull-out couch and staring at the ceiling, his mind cycling through every possible scenario for the coffee meeting that waited 24 hours away. But the moment he heard his daughter's footsteps thundering down the hallway, he pushed Naomi Reed from his thoughts and became the father Mia needed him to be. "Daddy! Daddy! Santa came! He really came!" She launched herself onto the couch, all wild hair and Christmas pajamas, her face radiant with uncomplicated joy. Evan caught her, pulling her close, breathing in the strawberry scent of her shampoo and the pure magic of 5-year-old belief. "Of course he came, Princess. You've been so good this year." "I asked for something really special," Mia whispered against his chest. "Do you think he heard me?" Evan thought of the drawing, the 3 stick figures holding hands, and his throat tightened. "I think Santa always hears the important wishes." They spent Christmas morning in a blur of wrapping paper and squeals, hot chocolate, and Claire's famous cinnamon rolls. Mia loved everything, the art supplies, the books, the impossibly soft unicorn that she immediately named Sparkle. But every few minutes, her eyes would drift to the window, as if waiting for something else to appear. Around noon, Claire pulled Evan aside while Mia was absorbed in building a castle with her new blocks. "She keeps looking outside. What's she waiting for?" "Her wish," Evan said quietly. "She wished for someone to love me so I wouldn't be sad anymore." Claire's expression crumpled. "Oh, Evan." "I know, and tomorrow I'm meeting a woman who might be the answer or might be the worst decision I've ever made, and I have no idea which one it is." "Then I guess you'll find out. Want me to keep Mia tomorrow morning?" "If you don't mind. 10 a.m. Should be back by noon." "Take your time. Really talk to her." "And Evan?" Claire gripped his arm. "Don't do this just for Mia. You deserve to be happy too." The rest of Christmas passed in a gentle haze. Dinner with Claire's neighbors, an impromptu cookie decorating session that left the kitchen covered in frosting, a movie that Mia fell asleep halfway through. Evan carried his daughter to bed, tucked her in, smoothed her hair back from her face. "Daddy?" Her voice was drowsy, halfway to dreams. "Yeah, Princess? Do you think wishes really come true?" Evan thought about Naomi Reed sitting alone in a restaurant on Christmas Eve, thought about the impossible question that had changed everything, thought about the coffee date that terrified and intrigued him in equal measure. "I think the important ones do," he said. "Eventually." Mia smiled, already asleep, and Evan sat beside her bed for a long time, watching her breathe, trying to imagine what it would mean to introduce someone new into their careful world, trying to imagine whether Naomi Reed could be the answer to his daughter's wish, or just another person who would ultimately leave. He didn't sleep well that night. His mind kept replaying the restaurant, Naomi's voice asking that impossible question, the way she'd looked both powerful and vulnerable in the candlelight. He'd Googled her after Mia fell asleep, found articles about Reed Technologies' expansion, interviews where Naomi discussed innovation and risk-taking with the same controlled composure she'd shown at dinner. She was exactly who she'd claimed to be, successful, brilliant, formidable, and apparently lonely enough to propose marriage to a stranger in a restaurant. By the time December 26th arrived, Evan had convinced himself a dozen times to cancel and a dozen times to keep the appointment. He dressed carefully, not too formal, not too casual, and kissed Mia goodbye with promises of lunch at her favorite pizza place. "Where are you going?" she asked, looking up from the new coloring book Claire had bought her. "Just meeting someone for coffee, Princess." "A friend?" "Maybe. We'll see." Mia seemed satisfied with that answer, already turning back to her artwork. Claire caught Evan's eye over his daughter's head, mouthed, "Good luck," and shooed him toward the door before he could second-guess himself again. The Daily Grind sat on a corner 2 blocks from Evan's apartment, a neighborhood fixture that served excellent coffee and didn't try too hard to be trendy. He arrived 10 minutes early, ordered a black coffee he didn't really want, and claimed a table near the window where he could watch the street. Naomi arrived at exactly 10 o'clock. She looked different in daylight, dressed in dark jeans and a cream sweater that made her seem more human somehow, less like the polished CEO from the restaurant. Her hair was down, falling in soft waves around her shoulders. She scanned the coffee shop with the same careful assessment Evan had seen 2 nights ago, spotted him, and something in her expression eased. "Evan?" She approached the table and he stood automatically. "Thank you for coming. I wasn't sure you would." "I wasn't sure either," he admitted. "Can I get you coffee?" "I'll get it. What are you drinking?" "Black coffee, but you don't have to." "I know. I want to." Naomi smiled slightly. "Besides, it gives me something to do with my hands. I'm more nervous than I expected." The honesty surprised him. "Me too." She returned a few minutes later with a cappuccino and a blueberry muffin that she immediately began shredding into small pieces without eating. Evan recognized the nervous habit. He'd done the same thing with his pasta 2 nights ago. They sat in silence for a moment, the weight of the impossible conversation stretching between them. Finally, Naomi spoke. "I've been thinking about what to say. Prepared about 17 different opening statements. They all sounded insane, so I'm just going to start with the truth. I'm terrified right now." "That makes 2 of us." "Good. That seems like a reasonable place to begin." Naomi took a sip of her cappuccino, gathering herself. "So, complete honesty. That's what we agreed on." "That's what we agreed on." "Then I'll start. My name is Naomi Reed. I'm 34. I became CEO of Reed Technologies when my father had a stroke 6 years ago. I work approximately 80 hours a week. I live alone in a penthouse that costs more than most people make in a lifetime, and I can't remember the last time I had a conversation that wasn't about quarterly earnings or market share. I cannot have biological children due to a genetic condition, and I am so tired of being alone that I did something completely irrational in a restaurant 2 nights ago." She delivered the information clinically, like reading a report, but Evan heard the pain underneath. "Your turn," Naomi said. Evan wrapped both hands around his coffee cup. "My name is Evan Brooks. I'm 32. I'm an architect, was an architect. Now I mostly work from home doing freelance design work so I can be available for my daughter. Mia is 5. Her mother, Sarah, died 3 years ago in a car accident. I've tried dating 4 times in the last year. Every woman who finds out I have a daughter leaves. And I'm starting to believe that being a single father means being alone forever." "Thank you," Naomi said quietly, "for trusting me with that." "It's only fair. You trusted me first." Evan leaned forward. "So now what? We've established that we're both lonely and desperate. That doesn't automatically mean marriage makes sense." "No, it doesn't, which is why I think we need to talk about what we actually want. Not just what we're running from, but what we're running toward." Naomi set down her cup, meeting his eyes. "Do you want to get married again, Evan? Not to me necessarily, but in general. Is marriage something you want?" The question landed hard. Evan hadn't let himself think about it directly, had focused instead on the smaller goal of just finding someone who would stay for a second date. But now, forced to articulate it, he found the answer rising easily. "Yes. I want partnership. I want someone to share parenting with, someone who will help carry the weight. I want Mia to grow up seeing healthy love, seeing what it means to choose someone every day." He paused. "And I want someone to come home to. Someone who knows my coffee order and asks about my day and doesn't leave when things get hard." Naomi's expression softened. "That's a good answer. What about you? What do you want?" She was quiet for a long moment, her fingers still shredding the muffin. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. "I want to matter to someone, not for my money or my company or what I can provide. I want someone to care if I make it home safely. I want to be chosen, not calculated. And I want—" She stopped, swallowed hard. "I want to be a mother, in whatever way that's possible. I've wanted it for so long that it's become this ache I carry everywhere. Watching families in restaurants, seeing pregnant women on the street, knowing I'll never have that biological connection but desperately wanting the relationship anyway." Evan felt something crack open in his chest. There was no pretense in Naomi's words, no calculation, just raw honesty that matched his own desperation. "Your daughter," Naomi continued. "Mia, tell me about her." And so Evan did. He told Naomi about Mia's obsession with art and her collection of stuffed animals, each with their own elaborate backstory. He told her about the way Mia hummed while she colored, about her fierce protectiveness toward other kids at school, about how she still sometimes crawled into his bed at night when the dreams got bad. He showed Naomi pictures on his phone, Mia covered in paint, Mia laughing at the park, Mia asleep with her elephant clutched tight. "She's beautiful," Naomi said, studying the photos with careful attention. "She has your eyes. She has her mother's smile. Tell me about Sarah, if you're comfortable." Evan hadn't expected that. Most people avoided mentioning Sarah as if her death was too uncomfortable to acknowledge. But Naomi watched him with patient curiosity, and something about her steady presence made the words come easier. Sarah was a teacher, 2nd grade. She loved her students like they were her own. She was patient and kind and funny, and she made everything seem possible. Evan smiled despite the ache. "We met in college, got married too young, had Mia probably before we were ready, but we were happy, really happy. And then one Tuesday afternoon, a drunk driver ran a red light, and everything ended." "I'm so sorry." "So am I, every day." Evan looked up. "But I can't live in that grief forever. Mia deserves better, and maybe I do too." Naomi nodded slowly. "Can I ask you something difficult?" "I think we're past the point of easy questions. If we did this, if we actually explored this arrangement, would I always be competing with Sarah's memory? Would I always be the replacement, the second choice? The person who isn't her?" The question was sharp and fair. Evan forced himself to sit with it, to really consider the answer rather than offering empty reassurance. "I don't know," he said finally. "I'd like to say no. I'd like to believe I'm ready to move forward without dragging ghosts into something new. But I can't promise that. What I can promise is that I'm trying, that I want to build something new rather than trying to recreate what I lost." "That's honest. I appreciate that." Naomi folded her hands on the table. "My turn for difficult questions. If we did this, what would you expect from me in terms of Mia? What role would I play?" "I don't know that either. I've never had to think about it before." Evan considered. "I guess I'd want someone who genuinely cares about her, who isn't just tolerating her existence but actually wants to be part of her life. Someone who will show up to school events and help with homework and be there when she needs another adult who isn't me." "A parent," Naomi said quietly. "Eventually, maybe. But that's not something I'd expect immediately. That would have to develop naturally. And if it didn't? If Mia and I didn't bond the way you hoped? Then we'd figure out something else. Or we'd admit this was a mistake and end it before anyone got hurt worse." Evan met her eyes. "I won't force Mia into a relationship that doesn't work. She comes first, always. I would expect nothing less." Naomi leaned back. "Okay, more logistics. Where would we live? My penthouse isn't exactly child-friendly. I have a house, 3 bedrooms in Lincoln Park. It needs some work, but it's home. Mia's school is nearby. All her friends are in the neighborhood. Would you expect me to move in with you?" "I don't know what I expect. This is all theoretical insanity." Evan ran a hand through his hair. "But if we're talking about actual marriage, then yes, I'd expect us to live together, to build a home together. I'm not interested in a part-time arrangement or maintaining separate lives." "Neither am I." Naomi took a breath. "Money. We should talk about money." "I'm not interested in your money, Naomi. I make enough to support myself and Mia. We're not wealthy, but we're comfortable." "I know, but I have significant assets and I need to protect them. I'd want a prenuptial agreement." "That seems reasonable." "It doesn't offend you?" "Why would it? You built something and you want to protect it. I'd do the same." Evan paused. "But I'd also want to contribute. I don't want to be supported or taken care of. I want to be an equal partner." "How would that work when there's such a disparity in our incomes?" "I don't know. We'd figure it out, set up separate accounts, joint accounts, decide together how to handle expenses. But I need you to understand something, Naomi. I'm not looking for a meal ticket. I'm looking for a partner." She studied him for a long moment, and he couldn't quite read her expression. "Do you know how rare that is? How many men have calculated my net worth before they've learned my last name? I imagine it's exhausting. It's dehumanizing. Naomi's voice wavered slightly. It's made me believe I can't trust anyone, that every smile is transactional, every compliment is strategy. I can't promise I'm not secretly an asshole, Evan said, but I can promise I didn't Google your net worth. I don't actually care how much money you have. You Googled me, though. I saw the article views spike. Evan felt heat crawl up his neck. I wanted to make sure you were real, that this wasn't some elaborate scam. And you're apparently brilliant and terrifying and featured in Forbes' 30 Under 40 list. Naomi laughed, a sound that transformed her entire face. Is that your way of saying you were impressed? Maybe a little intimidated? Good. I'd hate to lose my edge. She sobered. But I'm serious about the prenup, Evan. I've worked too hard to build Reed Technologies to risk losing it in a divorce. We're already planning for divorce? I'm being realistic. 50% of marriages end. We'd be starting with even longer odds. Maybe. Or maybe we'd be starting with clearer expectations and better communication than most couples have. Evan leaned forward. Look, I'm not opposed to a prenup. Protect your assets. But don't go into this assuming we'll fail. If we do this, I'm all in. For better or worse. Naomi's eyes glistened. You don't even know me. No, but I want to. That's why I'm here. They sat in silence for a moment, the weight of everything they'd discussed settling between them. The coffee shop hummed with other people's conversations, oblivious to the impossible negotiation happening in the corner table. I have more questions, Naomi said finally. So do I. But maybe we should take a break. This is intense. Do you want to walk? There's a park nearby. They left the coffee shop and headed toward the small neighborhood park 2 blocks away. The day was cold, but clear. The snow from Christmas Eve still pristine on the grass. They walked in silence for a while, comfortable enough not to fill every moment with words. What would we tell people? Naomi asked eventually. If we actually did this, what would we say? About how we met? About everything, the timeline, the arrangement, how we went from strangers to married. Evan considered. We could tell them the truth, that we met unexpectedly, realized we wanted similar things, and decided to build something together. That's not technically a lie. No, just not the complete truth. I don't want to lie to people, Naomi said, but I also don't want to explain that I proposed marriage to a stranger in a restaurant. That seems like something that would haunt us forever. Agreed. So we tell a version of the truth. We met. We connected. We moved quickly because we both knew what we wanted. People will think it's crazy. People always think something's crazy when it doesn't fit their expectations. Evan stopped walking, turning to face Naomi. But here's what I keep coming back to. This might be unconventional, but is it really crazier than hoping the traditional path will work when it keeps failing us? Is it crazier than being alone forever because we're too scared to try something different? Naomi met his eyes. When you put it that way, it sounds almost reasonable. That's because desperation has made us both slightly insane. She laughed again, that same transformative sound. Probably, but maybe insanity is underrated. They resumed walking, circling the park's small pond. Ducks huddled on the ice, and Evan found himself thinking about resilience, about creatures that survived winter by adapting rather than fleeing. Tell me what you're afraid of, Naomi said. Specifically, if we did this, what keeps you up at night? Evan didn't have to think about the answer. That I'll fail Mia. That introducing someone into her life who then leaves will break her. She's already lost her mother. I can't let her lose someone else. I understand that fear, but can I point out something? Please. She's already losing something by watching you be lonely. She made a Christmas wish for you to find love. She's carrying your pain whether you realize it or not. The words hit like a physical blow. That's not fair. It's not meant to be. It's meant to be true. Naomi's voice was gentle. Kids are resilient, Evan, but they're also perceptive. You think you're protecting her by keeping her separate from your search for companionship, but what you're actually teaching her is that her father doesn't deserve happiness. Evan stopped walking again, something hot and angry rising in his chest. You don't get to tell me how to parent my daughter. You're right, I don't. I'm sorry. Naomi held up her hands. That was out of line. They stood in tense silence, and Evan felt the careful connection they'd been building start to fracture. This was it, the moment where everything fell apart, where they both realized this was a terrible idea. But then Naomi spoke again, her voice rough. I'm doing this all wrong. I'm approaching this like a business negotiation when it's not. It's your life, your daughter, your heart, and I have no right to make judgments about any of it. The anger drained as quickly as it had risen. You're not wrong, though, about Mia carrying my pain. I just don't know what to do about it. Maybe you introduce her to someone who wants to carry it with you. Maybe you let her see that it's okay to take risks on people. Maybe you trust that she's stronger than you think. Naomi met his eyes. Maybe you trust that I wouldn't hurt her intentionally. Can you promise that? No. I can promise I'd try my absolute hardest not to. But people hurt each other, Evan, even when they're trying not to. Even when they love each other, she paused. What I can promise is that if I commit to this, I commit completely. I don't abandon ship when things get hard. I fight for what I believe in. And you believe in this? In us? In something that started with a crazy question in a restaurant? I believe in possibility. I believe in taking calculated risks. And I believe that sometimes the universe gives you an opportunity disguised as insanity, and the real mistake is not taking it. Evan wanted to argue, wanted to point out all the ways this could go wrong, wanted to protect himself and Mia from more potential loss. But standing in the cold December air, watching Naomi look at him with complete honesty, he found himself wondering if maybe protection wasn't the same as living. What if we tried? The words came out before he could stop them. Not marriage, not yet, but actually dating, getting to know each other properly, and then, if it feels right, introducing you to Mia, taking it slow. Naomi's expression shifted, hope flickering. You'd be willing to do that? I'm here, aren't I? I showed up. That has to mean something. It means you're braver than you think. Naomi stepped closer. Okay, let's try. Let's date. Let's see if two broken halves can actually make something whole. Just like that? Just like that. Unless you have more questions? About 1,000, but they can wait. Evan found himself smiling despite everything. So, if we're dating, I should probably take you to dinner, actual dinner, where we both stay for the entire meal. That sounds reasonable. When? Tonight? Naomi blinked. Tonight? Don't you have to get back to Mia? My sister has her until after lunch. I can make dinner work if you can. I don't have plans. I never have plans. She smiled. Okay. Tonight. Dinner. A real date. Should I pick you up or let's meet somewhere? I'll text you the address. Naomi pulled out her phone. 7 o'clock? 7 works. They stood there, both slightly stunned by what they'd just agreed to. Around them, the park continued its winter stillness, the world moving forward while they negotiated something impossible. Evan? Naomi's voice was soft. Yeah? Thank you. For giving this a chance, for not running away. Thank you for being crazy enough to ask the question in the first place. She laughed, and the sound seemed to thaw something frozen between them. They walked back toward the coffee shop in companionable silence, and when they reached his car, Naomi surprised him by pulling him into a brief hug. See you tonight, she said. See you tonight. Evan watched her walk away, watched her climb into an expensive car that probably cost more than his house, watched her sit for a moment before starting the engine. She looked small suddenly, vulnerable in a way that had nothing to do with physical size and everything to do with emotional exposure. Then she was gone, and Evan was alone with his racing thoughts and the impossible reality of what he'd just agreed to. He was going to date Naomi Reed. He was going to see if this insane proposal could become something real. He was going to take a risk that terrified him more than anything had in 3 years. His phone buzzed. A text from Naomi. Address: Bistro Margot, 1437 North Wells. It's quiet and intimate. I'll make reservations. Evan replied, Perfect. See you there. Another buzz. And Evan? I'm glad you stayed. In the coffee shop, in the park. I'm glad you didn't run. He typed back, Me too. The drive back to Claire's apartment passed in a blur. Evan's mind raced through everything that had just happened, every word exchanged, every moment of connection and friction. By the time he reached his sister's building, he felt exhausted and exhilarated in equal measure. Mia launched herself at him the moment he walked through the door. "Daddy, you're back! Can we go for pizza now?" "Absolutely, Princess. Let me just talk to Aunt Claire for a minute." He followed his sister into the kitchen while Mia gathered her coat and shoes. Claire raised an eyebrow. "Well? We're going to dinner tonight." "Tonight? Evan, you just met her for coffee." "I know, but it feels right. Or right enough to try." "Did you tell her about Mia?" "Of course I told her about Mia. That's the whole point, Claire. She wants to be part of our lives, all of our lives." After one coffee date. After an honest conversation about what we both want, about what we're both afraid of, about whether two broken people can maybe fix each other. Evan grabbed his sister's hands. "I know this is fast, I know it's crazy, but I haven't felt this hopeful in 3 years." Claire's expression softened. Okay, go to dinner. But Evan, be careful. Not just with your heart, with Mia's." "I will, I promise." He took his daughter for pizza, listened to her chatter about the castle she'd built with her blocks, watched her color on the paper tablecloth with fierce concentration. And all the while, part of his mind was already at Bistro Margot, already sitting across from Naomi Reed, already exploring the impossible possibility that maybe his daughter's Christmas wish was coming true in the strangest way possible. That evening, Evan stood in front of his closet trying to decide what one wore to dinner with a CEO who'd proposed marriage in a restaurant. He settled on dark jeans and a button-down shirt that Sarah had always said brought out his eyes, then immediately felt guilty for thinking about Sarah while getting ready to date someone else. The guilt was familiar, expected. What surprised him was how quickly it faded, replaced by something that felt almost like excitement. He drove to Bistro Margot through evening traffic, parallel parked 3 blocks away, and stood outside the restaurant taking deep breaths that turned to frost in the December air. Through the window, he could see Naomi already seated at a corner table studying something on her phone with that same focused intensity she brought to everything. She looked up as if sensing his presence, and their eyes met through the glass. She smiled, and something in Evan's chest loosened. He pushed through the door and walked toward his impossible future, one careful step at a time. The dinner lasted 3 hours, and by the end of it, Evan couldn't remember why he'd been so terrified. Naomi was funny in unexpected ways, self-deprecating about her workaholic tendencies, genuinely curious about his architectural work. They talked about everything and nothing: favorite books, worst travel experiences, the peculiar loneliness of being surrounded by people while feeling completely alone. When the waiter finally hinted that the restaurant was closing, they both seemed surprised that so much time had passed. "I should let you go," Naomi said as they stood outside in the cold. "You have to get back to Mia. She's asleep by now, but yeah, I should head home." Evan hesitated, then took a chance. "Can I see you again? Soon? How about New Year's Eve, unless you already have plans?" "My plans involve staying home with Mia and watching the ball drop on TV. Not exactly glamorous." "That sounds perfect," Naomi said, and something in her voice made Evan believe she meant it. "Could I join you? I'd like to meet her, if you think she's ready." The question caught him off guard. They'd only had 2 conversations, one impossible proposal and one dinner, and already they were talking about introducing Naomi to Mia. It was too fast, way too fast. Every parenting instinct screamed at him to pump the brakes, to wait, to protect his daughter from potential disappointment. But then he thought about Mia's drawing, the 3 stick figures holding hands, and heard himself say, "Okay, New Year's Eve, come for dinner around 6. Nothing fancy, just pizza and sparkling cider and watching a countdown Mia will probably sleep through." "That sounds like the best New Year's Eve I've had in years." Naomi stepped closer, and for a moment Evan thought she might kiss him. Instead, she squeezed his hand once, firmly. "Thank you for taking this chance with me. Thank you for being brave enough to ask." The days between that dinner and New Year's Eve passed in a strange blur. Evan and Naomi texted constantly, good morning messages and random thoughts throughout the day, late-night conversations after Mia was asleep. They talked on the phone twice, once for an hour while Naomi was stuck in traffic, and once at midnight when Evan couldn't sleep and Naomi was still working. Each conversation revealed new layers, new compatibilities, new reasons to believe this impossible thing might actually work. But as New Year's Eve approached, Evan's anxiety increased proportionally. He'd never introduced Mia to anyone he was dating, never had to explain to his 5-year-old daughter that Daddy's friend was maybe going to be something more. Never had to watch Mia decide whether to accept someone new into their carefully constructed world of two. The morning of December 31st, he sat Mia down at breakfast with careful deliberation. "Princess, I want to talk to you about something." Mia looked up from her cereal, milk dripping from her spoon. "Am I in trouble?" "No, baby, nothing like that. I just wanted to tell you that someone's coming for dinner tonight. A friend of mine named Naomi." "Is she nice?" "I think so. I hope so." Evan took a breath. "She's someone Daddy likes very much, and I wanted you to meet her." Mia's eyes went very round. "Is she going to be my new mommy?" The question landed like a punch. Evan tried to keep his expression neutral, even as panic clawed at his chest. "We're just getting to know each other, Mia. It's too soon to talk about anything like that." "But maybe someday?" "Maybe. If everyone gets along and it feels right. But no promises, okay? I need you to understand that." Mia nodded solemnly, then went back to her cereal like they'd been discussing the weather. Evan watched her, trying to gauge her reaction, but his daughter had already moved on to humming the theme song from her favorite cartoon. He spent the rest of the day alternating between excitement and terror. He cleaned the house twice, ordered pizza from Mia's favorite place, bought sparkling cider and actual champagne in case Naomi wanted something stronger. By 5:30, he was a wreck. "Daddy, you're being weird," Mia announced from her position on the couch, surrounded by crayons and paper. "Am I?" "You keep walking around touching things, like you forgot what things are." Evan laughed despite his nerves. "You're right, I'm being weird. I'm just nervous." "Why? Is Naomi scary?" "No, Princess. I just want you to like her, and I want her to like you." "Why wouldn't she like me? I'm awesome." The simple confidence of childhood. Evan pulled Mia into a hug, breathing in her strawberry shampoo. "You're absolutely right. You're the most awesome person I know." The doorbell rang at exactly 6 o'clock. Evan took a deep breath, checked his reflection in the hallway mirror one more time, and opened the door. Naomi stood on his porch holding a bag that clinked with bottles and a wrapped package. She'd dressed down for the occasion, jeans and a soft blue sweater that made her eyes seem even darker. Her hair was pulled back in a ponytail, and she looked younger somehow, less like a CEO and more like someone who could belong in his life. "Hi," she said, and Evan could hear the nervousness underneath the greeting. "Hi. Come in. It's freezing out there." Naomi stepped inside, and Evan took the bag from her hands. "I brought wine for us and this for Mia. I hope that's okay. I wasn't sure if bringing a gift was appropriate or if it would seem like I'm trying too hard." "It's perfect. She's in the living room. Fair warning, she's very excited to meet you." "That makes one of us who isn't terrified." They walked into the living room where Mia sat surrounded by her artwork, and Evan watched his daughter's face as she caught sight of Naomi. Something flickered in Mia's expression, assessment maybe, or comparison to some internal standard. Then she smiled, bright and uncomplicated. "Hi, I'm Mia. I'm 5 3/4. Are you Daddy's friend?" Naomi crouched down to Mia's level with an ease that surprised Evan. "Hi, Mia. I'm Naomi, and yes, I'm your daddy's friend. I hope that's okay with you." "It's very okay. Daddy needs more friends. He's sad a lot." Evan felt his face flush. "Mia, it's true, Daddy. You get that quiet face when you think I'm not looking." Mia turned back to Naomi. "But you make him smile. I can tell because he's smiling right now, even though he's embarrassed." Naomi laughed, a sound that seemed to fill the room. "You're very observant, Mia, and very honest. I like that. Daddy says I'm too honest sometimes. Like when I told Mrs. Henderson her breath smelled like coffee and sadness." "That's definitely honest," Naomi agreed, still smiling. "I brought you something. Would you like to see?" Mia's eyes lit up as Naomi handed her the wrapped package. She tore into it with 5-year-old enthusiasm, gasping when she revealed what was inside. An elaborate art set complete with watercolors, pastels, and fancy paper. This is so cool. Look, Daddy, it has real watercolors. That's very generous, Naomi. You didn't have to. I wanted to. Evan told me Mia loves art. Naomi met his eyes over his daughter's head. I hope I didn't overstep. You didn't. Thank you. The evening unfolded with surprising ease. They ate pizza on the living room floor while Mia demonstrated her new art supplies, creating masterpieces with serious concentration. Naomi asked questions about each piece, genuine interest evident in her attention. She didn't talk down to Mia or treat her like a cute accessory. She engaged with his daughter like she was a real person whose opinions mattered. Evan watched them together and felt something shift in his chest. This could work. Maybe this could actually work. After dinner, they moved to the couch to watch the New Year's Eve countdown. Mia snuggled between Evan and Naomi, fighting sleep even as her eyes drooped. Naomi had her arms stretched across the back of the couch, her fingers occasionally brushing Evan's shoulder, and the casual intimacy of it made his breath catch. Naomi? Mia's voice was drowsy. Yes, sweetheart? Are you going to stay after New Year's, or are you going to leave like the other ladies? The room went silent except for the television. Evan felt his stomach drop. He'd thought Mia didn't know about the failed dates, but apparently his daughter saw everything. Naomi was quiet for a moment, and when she spoke, her voice was gentle but firm. I don't know what the future holds, Mia, but I can tell you this. I'm not someone who leaves easily. When I care about people, I stay. And I'm starting to care about you and your daddy very much. Promise? I promise that I'll try my absolute hardest. Is that good enough? Mia considered this with 5-year-old gravity. Okay, that's good enough. She was asleep before the ball dropped, curled against Evan's side, one hand clutching his shirt. Naomi watched her with an expression Evan couldn't quite read, something tender and sad and hopeful all at once. She's wonderful, Naomi whispered. She is. She's my whole world. I can see that. The way you look at her, the way you talk to her. You're a really good father, Evan. I'm trying. Most days I feel like I'm barely keeping my head above water. That's what good parents feel like. The ones who think they're doing everything right are usually the problem. Naomi shifted slightly. Can I tell you something? Of course. I was terrified coming here tonight. Terrified that Mia would hate me, or that I'd say something wrong, or that you'd realize this whole thing was a mistake. She looked at him, vulnerability clear in her eyes. But being here, watching you with her, seeing how you've built this life together, it's everything I've wanted and never thought I'd have. Evan's throat tightened. You really mean that? Every word. I know I come across as cold or calculated. It's a defense mechanism. But the truth is, I'm just as scared and desperate as you are. Maybe more. The television showed crowds celebrating in Times Square, thousands of people screaming and kissing and welcoming a new year. But in Evan's living room, time seemed suspended, just the three of them in their quiet bubble. I should probably get Mia to bed, Evan said reluctantly. Do you want help? Sure, if you want. They carried Mia to her bedroom together, Evan supporting her weight while Naomi pulled back the covers. His daughter barely stirred as they tucked her in. Her stuffed elephant immediately pulled close. Evan smoothed her hair, kissed her forehead, and turned to find Naomi watching with that same tender expression. In the hallway, with Mia's door cracked open behind them, Naomi spoke quietly. Thank you for letting me be part of this, for trusting me with her. Thank you for showing up, for being patient with both of us. They stood close in the narrow hallway, and Evan could smell her perfume, something subtle that made him want to lean closer. Naomi seemed to be thinking the same thing because she stepped forward, closing the distance between them. Can I kiss you? She asked, and the direct question was so perfectly Naomi that Evan smiled. Yes. The kiss was soft, tentative, a question more than a statement. Naomi's lips were warm, and she tasted like champagne and possibility. When they pulled apart, both slightly breathless, Evan saw his own wonder reflected in her eyes. Well, Naomi said. Yeah. Yeah. They stood there grinning at each other like teenagers until reality reasserted itself. Naomi checked her watch and winced. I should go. It's late, and you have Mia in the morning. Stay a little longer? We can actually celebrate New Year's now that Mia's asleep. They returned to the living room, refilled their champagne glasses, and settled on the couch with the careful distance of people newly aware of their attraction. The television had moved to recaps of the evening's celebrations, but neither of them paid attention. "So," Evan said, "this is really happening. We're really doing this." "Apparently. Unless you've changed your mind." "Have you?" "No." "Terrified, but not changing my mind." Naomi took a sip of champagne. "What do we do now? What's the next step?" "I guess we keep dating, keep getting to know each other. And we involve Mia gradually, let her get comfortable with you being around." "That sounds reasonable. What does gradually mean in practical terms?" "Maybe you come for dinner once a week, or we do something together on weekends, whatever feels natural." Evan paused. "I don't want to rush this for her sake, but I also don't want to drag it out unnecessarily if we both know where this is heading." "And where is it heading?" The question hung between them. Evan met Naomi's eyes, saw the same cautious hope he felt, and made a decision. Marriage. Eventually. If everything continues to feel right, if Mia bonds with you the way I hope she will, if we can figure out how to blend our lives without losing ourselves in the process. He took a breath. That's what we're working toward, right? That was the original impossible proposal. It was. It is. Naomi set down her glass. But I need you to know something, Evan. If we do this, when we do this, it can't be just for practical reasons. I need it to be real. I need us to actually care about each other, not just appreciate the convenience. I already care about you, more than I expected to after such a short time. I care about you too, and about Mia. That happened faster than I anticipated. Naomi smiled slightly. She's pretty hard not to love. She is, and she already likes you, I could tell. How could you tell? She fell asleep between us. She doesn't do that with people she's not comfortable with. She needs to feel safe. Naomi's eyes glistened. That means everything. You have no idea. They talked until almost 3 a.m, curled on opposite ends of the couch, slowly closing the distance between them as the night wore on. They talked about childhoods and past relationships, about dreams deferred and hopes rekindled. They talked about what kind of family they wanted to build and how to handle the inevitable complications. And underneath all of it ran a current of growing affection, the sense that maybe this impossible thing was becoming inevitable. When Naomi finally left, standing on the porch in the early morning cold, she kissed Evan once more. This kiss was less tentative, more certain, and it left him standing in the doorway long after her car had disappeared down the street. The next 2 months passed in a careful dance of increasing intimacy. Naomi came for dinner every Wednesday, bringing wine and stories from her week, listening to Mia's elaborate explanations of kindergarten drama with patient attention. They went to the park together on Saturdays, the 3 of them feeding ducks and exploring playgrounds. Naomi learned the rhythms of their life, Mia's bedtime routine, Evan's coffee preference, the way his daughter needed extra reassurance on Tuesdays because that was the day Sarah had died. And slowly, incrementally, they became something that looked like a family. Evan watched it happen with wonder and terror in equal measure. He watched Naomi help Mia with her homework, patient through frustrated tears. He watched them bake cookies together, the kitchen ending up covered in flour and both of them laughing. He watched Naomi learn to braid Mia's hair, to read her favorite bedtime stories with the right voices, to understand when his daughter needed space and when she needed closeness. And he fell in love. Not the desperate, drowning love of his first marriage, but something quieter, steadier. Love that felt like coming home. I need to tell you something, Naomi said one evening in late February. They were in his kitchen washing dishes while Mia watched a movie in the living room. My board is pressuring me about my personal life. Evan's hands stilled in the soapy water. What do you mean? They think I need to present a more stable image. They've suggested that someone in my position should be married, settled. It's archaic and sexist, but it's affecting my credibility. Naomi dried a plate with careful precision. I told them I was in a serious relationship. They want to meet you. Meet me? Why? Because if I'm going to use you as proof of my stability, they need to verify you're real. She set down the plate. I I know this is a lot, and I know we haven't talked about making anything official yet. But Evan, I need to know if you're serious about this, about us. Because I am. I'm completely serious. Evan turned to face her fully. They'd been dating for 2 months. 2 months of dinners and weekend outings and goodnight kisses that left him wanting more. 2 months of watching Naomi become part of his and Mia's life in ways that felt increasingly essential. 2 months of falling in love with someone he'd never expected to meet. I'm serious, he said. I'm absolutely serious. But there's something I need to do first. What? Ask Mia how she'd feel about making this official, about you becoming a permanent part of our family. Naomi's breath caught. You want to ask her permission? She deserves a say in this. It's her life too. Evan took Naomi's hands. But yes, I want to make this official. I want to marry you. I want to build a life together. I want Mia to have the mother she's been wishing for. Tears spilled down Naomi's cheeks. Are you sure? Really sure? This isn't just convenience or loneliness or... I love you, Evan interrupted. I didn't plan to. I wasn't looking for it. But I love you, Naomi. The way you care for Mia, the way you make room in your impossible schedule for us, the way you've learned our rhythms and adapted to our chaos. I love all of it. I love you. I love you too, Naomi whispered. So much it terrifies me. They kissed there in the kitchen, dishes forgotten, until Mia's voice called from the living room asking for more popcorn. They broke apart laughing, and Evan pulled Naomi into the living room where his daughter sat surrounded by stuffed animals. Mia, can we talk to you about something important? His daughter looked up, sensing the gravity in his tone. Am I in trouble? No, princess. The opposite, actually. Evan sat on the floor, pulling Mia into his lap, while Naomi settled beside them. You know how Naomi's been coming around a lot? How she's been part of our family? I like when she comes over. Good, I'm glad. Because we want to talk to you about making that permanent. About Naomi maybe moving in with us. About her being part of our family all the time, not just on Wednesdays and Saturdays. Mia's eyes went very wide. You mean like a real family? With a mommy? If that's what you want, we wouldn't force anything, but yes! Mia launched herself at Naomi, nearly knocking her over. Yes, 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 I want that. I've been wishing for it forever. Naomi caught Mia, holding her tight, and when she looked up at Evan, her face was streaming with tears. Is that really okay with you, sweetheart? You're sure? I'm super sure. You're nice, and you smell good, and you help me with my homework, and you don't get mad when I spill things. And you make Daddy happy. He smiles now, like all the time. You make me happy too, Naomi said, her voice breaking. Both of you. So incredibly happy. They held each other on the living room floor, the three of them tangled together, and Evan felt something settle deep in his chest. This was right. This was what he'd been searching for without knowing it. Not a replacement for what he'd lost, but something new and precious and entirely their own. The next week, they met Naomi's board at a formal dinner that made Evan profoundly uncomfortable. He wore his only suit, ironed his shirt twice, and tried not to feel completely out of his depth as they discussed market shares and quarterly projections. But when one of the board members asked pointed questions about his intentions, Evan found his voice. I love Naomi, he said simply. I love her intelligence and her strength and the way she shows up for my daughter without hesitation. I'm not interested in her money or her company. I'm interested in building a life with her. And if that's not good enough for this board, then frankly, that's your problem, not mine. The silence that followed was deafening. Then Naomi laughed, bright and genuine, and squeezed his hand under the table. I told you he was different, she said to the board. I told you he was real. The board approved. Of course they did. Not because of Evan's defiant speech, but because Naomi was brilliant and essential, and they needed her more than they needed to control her personal life. But the approval meant something anyway, meant they could move forward without corporate politics complicating their relationship. They set a date for April, just 2 months away, which seemed impossibly fast until Evan realized they'd been working toward this since that first impossible question in the restaurant. Why wait when they both knew what they wanted? The planning was simple. Neither of them wanted a big wedding. They invited close family and a handful of friends to a ceremony in Evan's backyard, where spring flowers were just beginning to bloom. Mia would be the flower girl. Claire would stand as Evan's witness. Naomi's younger brother would fly in from California to stand with her. Everything was falling into place with surprising ease, until the school art show. It happened 3 weeks before the wedding. Mia had been working on a special project for weeks, refusing to show Evan, insisting it was a surprise. The art show was scheduled for a Thursday evening, and of course Naomi would be there. She came to everything now: school events, parent-teacher conferences, the doctor's office when Mia had strep throat. She'd moved into their lives so completely that Evan couldn't remember what it had been like before her. They arrived at the elementary school gym to find it transformed into a gallery, children's artwork covering every available surface. Parents milled around with cups of weak coffee and proud smiles. Mia grabbed both their hands and dragged them toward her display, bouncing with excitement. "There, look, that's mine!" The artwork was a mixed media piece: paint, collage, photographs carefully arranged. At the center was a photo of Evan and Mia that Naomi had taken at the park last month. Surrounding it were smaller images: Naomi helping Mia with her homework, the three of them baking cookies, family dinners around the kitchen table. And bordering everything were hand-painted flowers and the words, "My family," in Mia's careful lettering. "It's beautiful, Princess," Evan said, his throat tight. "Naomi's in it because she's my new mom now," Mia announced proudly. "Mrs. Patterson said I could put whoever I wanted in my family picture, and I wanted Naomi." A voice behind them, cold and sharp, cut through the moment. "So you've replaced Sarah already?" Evan turned to find Rebecca standing there, his late wife's sister, someone he hadn't seen in over a year. She'd cut them off after Sarah died, unable to handle her grief, disappearing from their lives completely. Now she stood in the elementary school gym looking at Mia's artwork with an expression of pure betrayal. "Rebecca," Evan said carefully, "I didn't know you'd be here. Clearly. Otherwise you might have hidden your new replacement family." Rebecca's eyes were hard. "How long has this been going on? How long have you been parading some stranger in front of my niece, trying to make her forget her real mother?" "That's not what's happening," Naomi said quietly, but Rebecca ignored her. "Sarah's been gone 3 years, Evan. 3 years, and you've already found someone to take her place. Someone to be Mia's new mom, like the old one doesn't matter anymore." The words landed like physical blows. Around them, other parents were starting to stare, and Mia had gone very quiet, sensing the tension even if she didn't understand all the words. "Rebecca, this isn't the place," Evan started. "No? Then where is the place? When were you planning to tell me that you're erasing my sister from her own daughter's life?" "Nobody's erasing anyone," Evan said, trying to keep his voice level despite the fury building in his chest. "Sarah will always be Mia's mother. We talk about her every day, but Mia deserves to have people who love her in her life, and Naomi is a stranger, some woman you've known for what, a few months? And you're already letting Mia call her mom? Mia chose that herself. Nobody forced, because you let her, because you didn't protect Sarah's memory, because you were so desperate not to be alone that you jumped at the first woman who showed interest." The accusation hung in the air, ugly and sharp. Evan felt everyone's eyes on him. Parents, teachers, children. He felt exposed, judged, and underneath it all ran a current of guilt that Rebecca had tapped into with surgical precision. Was she right? Had he moved too fast? Had he betrayed Sarah's memory by falling in love again? "I think you should leave," he said to Rebecca, his voice harder than he'd meant it to be. "Oh, I'll leave. But I want you to know that Sarah would be devastated. She trusted you to take care of Mia, and this is what you've done. Replaced her with the first available substitute." Rebecca turned and walked away, and the gym erupted in whispers. Evan stood frozen, feeling the weight of everyone's judgment, feeling the truth of Rebecca's words settle into his bones. He'd moved on. He'd fallen in love. He'd let someone new into his daughter's life. And maybe that made him selfish. Maybe that made him a bad husband to Sarah's memory. "Evan," Naomi said softly. He looked at her, really looked at her, and suddenly all he could see was the impossibility of what they'd been trying to do. This woman wasn't Sarah. She would never be Sarah. And trying to build a family with her felt like betrayal, like giving up, like admitting that his first family hadn't been enough. "I need some air," he said. Evan, wait! But he was already walking away, already pushing through the crowd toward the door. Behind him, he could hear Mia starting to cry, could hear Naomi trying to comfort her, but he couldn't stop. The walls were closing in, and he needed space, needed to think, needed to figure out what he'd done. Outside, the evening air was cool and sharp. Evan leaned against the building, trying to catch his breath, trying to silence the voice in his head that sounded uncomfortably like Rebecca. He'd been so sure this was right, so certain that loving Naomi wasn't betraying Sarah. But now doubt crept in, insidious and cold. His phone buzzed. A text from Naomi. Where are you? Mia needs you. He couldn't go back in there, couldn't face everyone's stares and whispered judgments, couldn't pretend everything was fine when his dead wife's sister had just accused him of betrayal in front of half the school. Another text. Evan, please, talk to me. He typed back. I need time. Take Mia home. I'll be there later. The response came immediately. Don't do this. Don't shut me out. But he was already walking to his car, already driving with no destination in mind, already trying to outrun the guilt that chased him. He drove for hours, circling Chicago's streets, until he finally ended up at the cemetery where Sarah was buried. He hadn't been here in over a year, hadn't been able to face the stone with her name engraved in permanent letters, the physical proof that she was gone and never coming back. But now he stood in front of it in the dark, staring at dates that marked a life too short. I don't know what I'm doing, he said to the stone, to the memory, to the ghost that haunted his guilt. I thought I was doing the right thing. I thought I was building something good for Mia. But maybe I'm just being selfish. Maybe I'm trying to replace you because I'm too weak to handle being alone. The stone offered no answers. The dead didn't speak, no matter how desperately the living wanted them to. Evan's phone rang. Naomi. He declined the call, then turned his phone off completely. He didn't know what to say to her, didn't know how to explain that Rebecca's words had struck something deep and true, a fear he'd been carrying since that first night in the restaurant. He drove home after midnight to find the house dark except for a single lamp in the living room. Mia was asleep. She had to be, but Naomi sat on his couch, still wearing her clothes from the art show, her face pale and drawn. You came back, she said. It's my house. The coldness in his own voice surprised him. Naomi flinched like he'd struck her. Evan, we need to talk about what happened tonight. There's nothing to talk about. Rebecca was right. I've been trying to replace Sarah, and it's not fair to anyone. Not to Sarah's memory, not to Mia, and not to you. That's not true. You're building something new, not replacing. You don't understand. The words came out louder than he'd intended. You didn't know Sarah. You don't know what I lost. And you certainly don't get to tell me how to grieve or when I'm allowed to move on. Naomi stood, her composure cracking. I know I'm not Sarah. I've never tried to be Sarah. But I love you, and I love Mia, and I've given everything I have to this relationship. Maybe that's the problem. Maybe you're trying too hard. Maybe this whole thing was a mistake from the beginning. The words hung between them, brutal and irrevocable. Naomi's face went very still. Do you mean that? Her voice was barely a whisper. Evan wanted to take it back, wanted to pull her close and apologize and admit that he was just scared and hurting and lashing out. But the guilt was too loud, drowning out everything else. I don't know what I mean. I just know that tonight, standing in that gym with everyone staring at us, I felt like I was betraying Sarah. And I can't do that. I can't build a life on top of her grave. So what are you saying? You want to call off the wedding? I'm saying I need time to think. I'm saying maybe we moved too fast. I'm saying maybe Rebecca was right, and I've been selfish and desperate, and I'm just convenient, Naomi finished, her voice hollow. A solution to your problem. That's all I've ever been, isn't it? Not someone you love, but someone who filled a gap. That's not fair. No. Then what is this, Evan? Because I stood in that gym tonight and watched a woman attack us, attack our relationship, attack everything we've been building, and you ran. You didn't defend us. You didn't defend me. You just ran. I needed space. No, you needed an excuse to doubt this. You've been waiting for a reason to bail, and Rebecca gave it to you. Naomi's voice broke. I should have known. I should have realized that I'd always be second to a ghost, that no matter what I did, I'd never be enough. Naomi, that's not... I'm leaving, she said, grabbing her purse. I'll give you all the time you need to think. But Evan, while you're thinking, remember this, Sarah is gone. I know that's painful, and I know you loved her, but she's gone, and you're still here, and Mia is still here, and you deserve to be happy. We all do. If you can't see that, if you're going to let Rebecca's grief dictate your life, then maybe this is a mistake. She walked to the door, then turned back. And one more thing. Mia cried for an hour tonight. She kept asking why you left, why you didn't stay to see her artwork, why you ran away when Aunt Rebecca was mean. I did my best to comfort her, but she needs her father. So whatever you're going through, whatever you're feeling, don't take it out on her. She doesn't deserve that. The door closed behind Naomi with a soft click that sounded like an ending. Evan stood in his living room, surrounded by evidence of the life they'd been building. Naomi's coffee mug on the side table, the cookbook they'd been using to try new recipes, the photo of the three of them that Mia insisted on displaying prominently. And all he felt was the crushing weight of his own cowardice. He'd done exactly what Naomi said. He'd run. He'd let fear and guilt override everything else, and he'd hurt everyone in the process. Mia, crying for an hour. Naomi, defending them alone while he hid. And Sarah, whose memory he'd used as a weapon against his own happiness. Evan sank onto the couch, buried his face in his hands, and finally let himself cry. For Sarah, gone too soon. For Mia, caught in his confusion. For Naomi, who'd given him everything and gotten doubt in return. And for himself, too scared to accept that loving again wasn't betrayal. He sat there until dawn broke through the windows, and he still had no answers. Just the terrible certainty that he'd broken something precious, and he didn't know if it could be fixed. Morning came with the sound of Mia's feet padding down the hallway. Evan hadn't moved from the couch, hadn't slept, had barely breathed through the long hours of darkness. His daughter appeared in the doorway, clutching her elephant, her face puffy from crying. "Daddy?" Her voice was small, uncertain in a way that broke him. "Why did you leave last night?" Evan opened his arms, and Mia climbed into his lap, fitting herself against his chest the way she had since she was a baby. "I'm sorry, Princess. I'm so sorry. Aunt Rebecca was mean. She said bad things about Naomi, but you didn't say anything back. You just left." The accusation was gentle, but it landed with devastating accuracy. Out of the mouths of babes came the truth he'd been avoiding all night. "I know, I made a mistake. I got scared and confused, and I handled it badly. Is Naomi still going to be my new mom?" Mia pulled back to look at him, her eyes red-rimmed. "Or did you make her go away like you did with Aunt Rebecca?" "I didn't make Naomi go away, baby. She left because I hurt her feelings, because I said things I shouldn't have said." "Then you have to apologize. That's what you always tell me to do when I hurt someone's feelings." The simplicity of childhood logic. Evan wished everything could be solved with a simple apology, but he'd seen Naomi's face last night, heard the finality in her voice. He'd crossed a line, revealed doubts that couldn't be unsaid. "It's more complicated than that, Mia." "Why? Don't you love her anymore?" The question pierced through all his confusion. "I do love her, very much." "Then why did you let Aunt Rebecca make you scared? Naomi's nice. She makes us happy. Mommy would want us to be happy." Evan froze. "What did you say?" "Mommy would want us to be happy. I know she would. She loved us a lot, so she'd want us to smile and have good things. That's what love means." Tears burned Evan's eyes. His 5-year-old daughter had just articulated what he'd been too afraid to accept, that Sarah's love for them wouldn't have wanted them trapped in grief forever. That loving Naomi didn't diminish what he'd had with Sarah. That moving forward wasn't betrayal. "You're right, Princess. You're absolutely right. So can you fix it? Can you make Naomi come back?" "I can try. I don't know if she'll listen, but I can try." Mia hugged him fiercely. "You have to try really hard, Daddy, because I miss her already, and you need her. You're sad without her." The rest of the day passed in a fog of self-recrimination. Evan called Claire, explained what had happened, listened to his sister tell him exactly how badly he'd screwed up. He tried calling Naomi 3 times, but each call went to voicemail. He texted apologies that felt inadequate even as he sent them. No response. By evening, desperation set in. He couldn't leave things like this, couldn't let fear and cowardice define the end of something so precious. He needed to see Naomi face to face, needed to grovel properly, needed to try to fix what he'd broken. Claire came to watch Mia, taking one look at Evan's face and pulling him into a hug. "Go get her," she said, "and this time don't run." Evan drove to Naomi's penthouse in the heart of downtown, a building with doormen and marble floors that made him feel profoundly out of place. The doorman recognized him from previous visits and waved him through without question, but the elevator ride to the top floor felt like ascending to judgment. He knocked on her door, and when there was no answer, knocked again harder. Finally, the door opened, and Naomi stood there in pajamas and a robe, her hair loose and uncombed, her eyes swollen from crying. "What are you doing here?" Her voice was flat, emotionless. "I need to talk to you, please, just 5 minutes. I think you said everything last night." "I said a lot of things last night. Most of them were wrong." Evan took a breath. "Please, Naomi, let me explain." She hesitated, then stepped back to let him in. The penthouse was exactly as he remembered, expensive, pristine, and somehow lonely despite its luxury. Naomi led him to the living room but didn't sit, didn't offer him a seat, just stood with her arms crossed, waiting. "I'm sorry," Evan started. "I'm sorry for running, for shutting you out, for saying you were convenient or a replacement. None of that was true. I was scared and hurting, and I took it out on you, and that was unforgivable." "You're right. It was unforgivable." Naomi's composure was back, that CEO armor firmly in place. "Do you have any idea what it felt like to stand in that gym alone while everyone whispered? To try to comfort your daughter while you disappeared? To realize that when things got hard, you'd rather run than defend what we've built?" "I know, and I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." "Sorry doesn't fix this, Evan. Sorry doesn't erase the fact that you let Rebecca's grief dictate your choices. Sorry doesn't change the reality that you still see me as second to Sarah's ghost. That's not true, isn't it? Be honest with yourself. Rebecca said I was a replacement, and you didn't defend me. You didn't tell her she was wrong. You just ran away and proved her right." The words hit like physical blows because they carried truth. Evan had let Rebecca's accusations become his own doubts, had given her grief power over his happiness. "You're right," he said quietly. "I let fear control me. I let guilt make me question everything. But Naomi, I need you to understand something. I've spent 3 years believing I didn't deserve to be happy again. 3 years thinking that moving on meant betraying Sarah. And then you showed up and asked me an impossible question, and suddenly I had permission to want more. But that doesn't mean the guilt disappeared. It doesn't mean I don't still struggle with feeling like I'm doing something wrong. So what? I'm supposed to just accept that I'll always be competing with a dead woman? That every time something gets hard, you'll run back to your guilt? No, you're supposed to know that I'm working on it, that I'm trying to believe I deserve this, deserve you, deserve happiness. But it's not easy, Naomi. It's really not easy." She was quiet for a long moment, and when she spoke again, her voice had lost some of its hardness. "I know it's not easy. But Evan, I can't be in a relationship where I'm constantly wondering if you're going to change your mind, where one cruel word from someone sends you spiraling into doubt. I need you to be sure, completely sure, and last night showed me that you're not. I am sure. About you. About us. About wanting to build a life together. Then why did you run?" The question hung in the air, demanding honesty. Evan forced himself to give it. "Because Rebecca said what I've been afraid to admit to myself. That maybe I'm being selfish. That maybe Mia deserves better than watching me stumble through trying to build a new family. That maybe Sarah would be disappointed in how quickly I moved on." He took a shaky breath. And hearing those fears spoken out loud, in front of everyone, made them feel real and true and impossible to fight. "But they're not true, Evan. Sarah would want you to be happy, and Mia is thriving with me in her life. You know both those things. You told me so yourself." "I know. And this morning Mia said almost exactly that. She told me her mommy would want us to be happy. That love means wanting good things for the people you care about. Naomi's expression softened slightly. She's a wise kid. She is. Wiser than me, apparently. Evan stepped closer. Naomi, I messed up. I let fear override everything else. But I'm here now, and I'm asking you to give me another chance. Not because I deserve it, but because what we have is worth fighting for. Is it? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you're going to run every time someone questions us, every time it gets hard. Then I need to prove to you that I won't. I need to show you that I'm committed to this, to us, no matter what anyone else says. How? How are you going to prove that? Evan didn't have a perfect answer. He just had the truth, raw and desperate. By showing up, by defending you when people question us, by choosing you openly and consistently, even when it's uncomfortable, by not running the next time I get scared. And if Rebecca comes back, if other people judge us, if someone else tells you this is wrong, then I tell them to mind their own business. Then I stand beside you and make it clear that you're not a replacement or a convenience. You're the woman I love, the woman I want to marry, the woman who's become essential to my and Mia's happiness. Naomi's eyes filled with tears. You really mean that? Every word. I love you, Naomi, and I'm sorry it took me breaking your heart to realize how much. She was quiet for so long that Evan thought she might tell him to leave, that his apology had come too late. But then she spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. I was so angry last night, so hurt. I thought about calling off the wedding, about ending this before I got hurt worse. But the truth is, I don't want to lose you. I don't want to lose Mia. I don't want to go back to being alone. You don't have to. I'm right here. I'm not going anywhere. Promise me, Naomi said, stepping closer. Promise me that the next time you get scared, you'll talk to me instead of running. Promise me you'll fight for us. I promise. No more running. No more shutting you out. When I get scared, Chimir, I'll tell you, and we'll face it together. Naomi closed the remaining distance between them and kissed him. It was desperate and fierce. 3 days of fear and pain and longing compressed into a single moment. When they finally broke apart, both were crying. I missed you, Naomi whispered against his lips. It's only been a day, and I missed you so much. I missed you too, and Mia missed you. She asked me this morning if I'd made you go away like I did with Rebecca. Naomi laughed through her tears. What did you tell her? That I hurt your feelings and needed to apologize. She told me to try really hard because she misses you and I'm sad without you. She's not wrong. She rarely is. Evan pulled Naomi closer. Come home with me. Please. Mia needs to see that we're okay, that I didn't break our family. Okay, let me get dressed. They drove back to Evan's house in Naomi's car, and when they walked through the door together, Mia launched herself at Naomi with a squeal that probably disturbed the neighbors. You came back, Daddy fixed it. Naomi caught her, lifting Mia easily. He did. He apologized very well. I told him he had to. That's what you do when you hurt someone's feelings. You're absolutely right. Naomi met Evan's eyes over Mia's head. And your daddy listened. Claire appeared from the kitchen, relief evident on her face. Well, it's about time. Evan Brooks, you're an idiot, but I'm glad you came to your senses. Thanks, Claire. Your support means everything. Shut up and hug your fiancé properly. They spent the evening as they had so many times before. Dinner around the kitchen table, Mia chattering about school, Naomi and Evan exchanging glances that said more than words. After Mia went to bed, they sat on the couch, Naomi curled against Evan's side, and talked about everything that had happened. I need to make things right with Rebecca, Evan said. Not for her sake, but for mine. I need her to know that loving you doesn't mean forgetting Sarah. Do you want me there when you talk to her? Actually, yes. I think you should be. Because part of making things right is showing her that you're not a replacement, that what we have is different, but equally real. That's brave, and probably going to be very uncomfortable. Probably. But running from discomfort got us here. I'm done running. It took 3 phone calls before Rebecca agreed to meet them. When she finally did, she suggested a coffee shop neutral territory, somewhere public where emotions would have to stay contained. Evan and Naomi arrived together, hands linked, united in a way they hadn't been at the art show. Rebecca was already there, looking older than Evan remembered, grief etched into lines around her eyes. She watched them approach with visible tension, and for a moment Evan thought she might leave. But she stayed seated, and he took that as permission to continue. "Thank you for meeting us," he said, sliding into the booth across from her. Naomi sat beside him, close enough that their shoulders touched. "I wasn't sure I should, but I've been thinking about what I said at the art show, and I wanted a chance to explain. I appreciate that, but I also need to say something first." Evan took a breath. "What you said was cruel. It was unfair to Naomi, unfair to Mia, and it came from a place of your pain, not truth. But you also hit on something I've been struggling with. So I need you to hear this, really hear it. I love Sarah. She was my wife, Mia's mother, and losing her broke me in ways I'm still healing from. But Rebecca, she's gone. And I'm still here, and Mia is still here, and we deserve to have a life that isn't defined entirely by grief." Rebecca's face crumpled slightly. "I know that. Intellectually, I know that. But seeing Mia call someone else mom, seeing you with her," she gestured at Naomi. "It felt like Sarah was being erased. I understand that fear. But Sarah isn't being erased. We talk about her every day. Mia knows stories about her mother, sees pictures, understands how much Sarah loved her. Naomi isn't trying to replace Sarah. She's creating something new." Naomi spoke for the first time, her voice gentle. "I never knew your sister, Rebecca. I never had the privilege of meeting her, but I know she loved Evan and Mia more than anything, because that love is still evident in how Evan parents, in the memories they share. I'm not trying to take her place or make anyone forget her. I'm just trying to love the family she left behind." Rebecca studied Naomi for a long moment. "You really love them?" "More than I thought possible. Mia is extraordinary, and Evan is the most devoted father I've ever seen. Being part of their lives is a privilege I don't take lightly." "And you're not with him for his money?" The question was sharp, but there was genuine curiosity underneath. Naomi almost smiled. "I have considerably more money than Evan. If anything, he should be worried I'm after his house." Despite everything, Rebecca laughed. It was brief and watery, but it was a laugh. Sarah would have liked that. She always said Evan was too trusting. "She was right about that," Evan said. "But Rebecca, I need you to understand something. Mia is happy, really happy. She's thriving at school, making friends, excited about the future. And a lot of that is because Naomi has brought stability and love into her life. You can disapprove of how fast we moved or question my choices, but please don't make Mia feel guilty for being happy." Rebecca was quiet for a long time, her hands wrapped around her coffee cup. When she finally spoke, her voice was thick with tears. "I've been so angry. At the drunk driver, at the universe, at Sarah for leaving. And I think I've been angry at you too, for moving on when I'm still stuck. It wasn't fair of me to take that out on you at the art show, or on Mia, or on you," she added, looking at Naomi. "I understand grief," Naomi said softly. "It makes us say and do things we don't mean. But Rebecca, we're going to get married. We're going to be a family. And I hope you can be part of that family, because Mia deserves to know her aunt. But if you can't accept me, if every interaction is going to be filled with resentment, then we need to establish boundaries. You're asking me to accept you. I'm asking you to give me a chance, to see that loving Evan and Mia doesn't make me your enemy, to understand that we can honor Sarah's memory while also building something new." Rebecca looked between them, her expression shifting through a dozen emotions. Finally, she nodded slowly. "I can try. I can't promise I won't struggle with it, but I can try, for Mia's sake." "That's all we're asking," Evan said. "A chance. And maybe, eventually, you'll see that this isn't about replacement. It's about survival, about choosing life over grief." They talked for another hour, painful and honest, working through layers of hurt and misunderstanding. It wasn't perfect. Rebecca still had reservations, still grieved her sister deeply, but by the end there was a tentative peace and agreement to try. As they left the coffee shop, Naomi squeezed Evan's hand. "That was hard, but necessary. I needed to stop running from difficult conversations." "You're getting better at it." "I have good motivation." He pulled her close, kissing her temple. Thank you for being there, for standing beside me even after I gave you every reason to leave. I'm not going anywhere, Evan. I told you that night in the restaurant. When I commit completely. The next 3 weeks passed in a flurry of wedding preparations and emotional recalibration. Evan was hyper-aware of his tendency to retreat when things got hard, so he forced himself to lean in instead. When wedding stress made him want to hide, he talked to Naomi. When doubts crept in late at night, he woke her up and shared them, rather than letting them fester. And slowly, the connection they'd built grew stronger, reinforced by honesty and choice. Mia was their constant reminder of why they were doing this. She blossomed with Naomi's presence, her confidence growing, her artwork reflecting the security she felt. One evening, she presented them with a new drawing, 3 figures holding hands, but this time with a 4th figure in the corner. Evan recognized Sarah from the picture Mia kept on her nightstand. "This is our family," Mia explained. "You and me and Naomi, and this is Mommy, watching us from heaven. Mrs. Patterson says people who love us never really leave. They just watch from somewhere else." Evan felt his throat close. Naomi wrapped an arm around Mia, pulling her close. "That's beautiful, sweetheart, and absolutely true. Your mommy will always be part of your family." "I know, but I'm glad I have you too."
Is that okay? To love Mommy and also love you?
"It's more than okay. It's perfect. Love isn't a limited resource, Mia. You can love as many people as your heart can hold." That night, after Mia was asleep, Evan pulled Naomi into his arms and held her tight. "Thank you," he whispered, "for understanding, for never making her choose. She shouldn't have to choose. Sarah will always be her mother. I'm just honored to be part of her life in whatever capacity she needs." The wedding dawned clear and bright, unseasonably warm for April. They'd kept everything simple, folding chairs in the backyard, flowers from the local market, a justice of the peace who'd agreed to keep the ceremony brief because Mia's attention span was limited. Claire helped Evan with his tie while Naomi got ready in the house, and his sister kept shooting him knowing looks. "What?" Evan finally asked. "Nothing, just glad you didn't completely screw this up. Thanks for the vote of confidence." "Hey, you earned the skepticism, but I'll admit, you proved me wrong. Naomi's good for you, good for both of you." Outside, guests were arriving. Not many. Naomi's brother and a few colleagues, some of Evan's friends from his architecture days, neighbors who'd watched Mia grow up, and Rebecca, who'd called 2 days earlier to ask if she could come. Evan had said yes immediately, grateful for the olive branch. Mia appeared in the doorway wearing her flower girl dress, a confection of pale pink that she'd insisted on. "Daddy, Naomi says it's time. Are you ready?" Evan looked at his daughter, at his sister, at the life he'd almost sabotaged through fear and cowardice. "Yeah, princess, I'm ready." They walked outside together, Mia clutching his hand, and Evan took his place under the simple arch they'd set up. Music played from someone's phone speaker, and then Naomi appeared at the back door. She'd chosen a simple dress, cream-colored and elegant, her hair loose around her shoulders. She wasn't being given away by her father, wasn't processing down an aisle with formal ceremony. She just walked toward Evan with steady purpose, her eyes locked on his, and he felt every doubt, every fear, every moment of hesitation fall away. This was right. This was where he was supposed to be. Naomi reached him, took his hands, and smiled. "Hi," she whispered. "Hi yourself." The justice of the peace began speaking, but Evan barely heard the words. He was too focused on Naomi's face, on the way the sunlight caught in her hair, on the future he could see reflected in her eyes. When it came time for vows, he spoke the traditional words but added his own. "Naomi, I promise to show up, to not run when things get hard, to choose you every day, no matter who questions us, to build a life with you that honors the past while embracing the future, to be the partner you deserve and the father Mia needs. I promise to be brave enough to accept happiness, even when fear tells me I don't deserve it." Naomi's eyes glistened with tears. "Evan, I promise to be patient with your grief while refusing to compete with ghosts, to love Mia as fiercely as I love you, to stand beside you through every challenge and celebrate every joy, to choose this family, this life, every single day, and to remind you, whenever you forget, that you deserve all the happiness the world can offer." The justice of the peace pronounced them married, and they kissed to applause and Mia's delighted squeal. As they broke apart, Mia launched herself at them both, and they caught her between them, the three of them tangled together, laughing. The reception was casual, food on folding tables, music from a playlist, dancing on the grass. Evan watched Naomi twirl Mia around the makeshift dance floor and felt something settle deep in his chest. This was his family. Not a replacement for what he'd lost, but something new and precious and entirely their own. Rebecca approached him as the sun began to set, casting everything in golden light. "Can I talk to you for a minute?" They walked to the edge of the yard, away from the celebration. Rebecca looked out at the party, at Naomi and Mia still dancing, and when she spoke, her voice was soft. "I was wrong. At the art show. About all of it. Rebecca. Let me finish. I was wrong, and I'm sorry. Watching you and Naomi today, seeing how happy Mia is, I realized that Sarah would have loved this. Not the specifics, maybe, but the fact that you're choosing to live fully again. That Mia has someone who loves her unconditionally. Sarah's greatest fear was that you'd both be alone after she died. You've proven that won't happen." Evan felt tears prick his eyes. "Thank you. That means more than you know. I'd like to be part of Mia's life again, if you'll let me. Not to judge or criticize, but to be her aunt. To tell her stories about Sarah. To be a bridge between who her mother was and who she's becoming." "I'd like that. We'd both like that." Rebecca hugged him, brief but fierce, then returned to the party. Evan stood alone for a moment, watching his new wife dance with his daughter, watching his sister laugh with Naomi's brother, watching the family he'd built from impossible circumstances. The sun painted everything gold, and for the first time in 3 years, Evan felt completely, unreservedly at peace. Naomi caught his eye across the yard and smiled, that same smile she'd given him in the restaurant on Christmas night when she'd asked her impossible question. She beckoned him over, and Evan crossed the grass to join his family, leaving the fear and guilt behind like shadows that couldn't exist in this light. Later that night, after the guests had left and Mia had fallen asleep in her bed, exhausted from excitement, Evan and Naomi stood in the kitchen cleaning up. The simple domesticity of it, washing dishes side by side, putting away leftover food, felt profound in its ordinariness. This was marriage, not grand gestures or dramatic moments, but the quiet choice to show up every day. "Happy?" Naomi asked, bumping his shoulder with hers. "Terrified," Evan admitted, "but happy. Incredibly happy." "Good terrified or bad terrified?" "Good terrified. The kind that means something matters, that I have something to lose." He set down the dish he'd been washing and turned to face her. "Thank you for not giving up on me, for seeing past my fear to what we could be. Thank you for being brave enough to answer an impossible question from a stranger in a restaurant." They smiled at each other, and Evan realized this was just the beginning. There would be hard days ahead, moments when grief resurfaced or doubt crept in. But they would face those moments together, choosing each other deliberately, building something new from broken pieces. From down the hall came a soft sound, Mia calling out in her sleep. Both Evan and Naomi moved toward her room automatically, a synchronized response that spoke to how thoroughly Naomi had integrated into their lives. They stood in the doorway watching Mia settle back into dreams, her stuffed elephant clutched tight. "Our daughter," Naomi whispered, and the simple possessive made Evan's heart clench. "Our daughter," he agreed. They returned to their cleaning, to their ordinary evening, to their extraordinary new life. And if Evan occasionally glanced at the photo of Sarah he kept on the mantel, it was with gratitude rather than guilt. Gratitude for the love they'd shared, for the daughter they'd created, for the foundation that made it possible for him to be brave enough to love again. The dishes finished, they turned off the lights and headed upstairs to their bedroom. Naomi's things now mixed with Evan's, her presence woven into every corner of the house. As they settled into bed, Naomi curled against his side, fitting perfectly into the space that had been empty for so long. "Evan?" Her voice was drowsy. "Yeah?" "I'm glad you said yes in the restaurant. I'm glad you took the chance." "Me too. Best decision I ever made." "Even better than architectural school?"
Especially better than architectural school. She laughed softly, and they drifted towards sleep together. Tomorrow would bring its own challenges, its own joys, its own opportunities to choose each other. But for tonight, they had this: peace, partnership, and the profound relief of no longer being alone. In the room down the hall, Mia slept soundly, dreaming of families and happiness, her Christmas wish finally, beautifully fulfilled. 3 months into their marriage, Evan woke to find Naomi's side of the bed empty. The clock read 2:47 a.m., and a sliver of light showed beneath the bathroom door. He waited, listening for sounds of illness, but heard nothing. After 5 minutes, concern outweighed politeness, and he knocked softly. "Naomi, you okay?" The door opened to reveal his wife sitting on the edge of the bathtub, still in her pajamas, her face streaked with tears. Evan's heart lurched. "What's wrong? Are you sick? Did something happen?" "I'm fine. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to wake you." "You didn't wake me. I rolled over and you were gone." He crouched in front of her, taking her hands. "Talk to me. What's going on?" Naomi looked at their joined hands, and when she spoke, her voice was barely audible. "I had a dream about my mother. She died when I was 12, and I dream about her sometimes. Usually they're good dreams, memories. But tonight she was disappointed in me." "Disappointed? Why?" "Because I can't give you biological children. Because I'm not a real mother to Mia. Because I took the easy way out by marrying into a ready-made family instead of building one from scratch." The words tumbled out, each one carrying years of internalized shame. "And I know it was just a dream, that it wasn't really her. But Evan, what if she's right? What if I'm cheating somehow? What if Mia grows up and realizes I'm not her real mom and—" "Stop." Evan cupped her face, forcing her to meet his eyes. "Stop right there. You are Mia's real mom. Biology doesn't determine that. Love does. Showing up does. Being there for school pickups and bedtime stories and middle-of-the-night bad dreams, that's what makes you her mother. But I didn't carry her. I didn't give birth to her. I didn't nurse her or change her first diaper or— Neither did I, and I'm still her father. Naomi, parenthood isn't about who contributed DNA. It's about who shows up every single day and chooses to love unconditionally." He wiped her tears with his thumbs. "And you've been showing up. You've been choosing her. Every single day since New Year's Eve, you've been choosing us. What if it's not enough? What if one day she needs something I can't give her because I'm not her biological mother? Then we'll figure it out together. That's what families do. They adapt and problem solve and love through the complications." Evan pulled her close. "But I need you to hear this. You didn't take the easy way out. Building a relationship with someone else's child is incredibly hard. You've had to earn Mia's trust, learn her quirks, navigate the grief of her losing Sarah. None of that was easy. You've worked for this, and you've earned your place in our family." Naomi clung to him, her tears soaking his shirt. "I'm scared I'll never be enough. That there'll always be this gap between us because I didn't start from the beginning. You know who else didn't start from the beginning? Every step-parent in the world, every adoptive parent, every person who chose to love a child who wasn't biologically theirs. And you know what? Their love isn't less real or less valid. It's just different, and different doesn't mean inferior." They sat on the bathroom floor, Evan holding Naomi while she cried out 3 decades of accumulated pain about her infertility, her mother's death, her fear of never being enough. He didn't try to fix it or minimize it. He just held her and let her feel everything she'd been suppressing. Eventually, the tears subsided. Naomi pulled back, wiping her face with shaking hands. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to fall apart like that." "Don't apologize. This is what marriage is, holding each other through the hard moments." Evan stood, pulling her up with him. "Come on, let's go back to bed." They crawled under the covers, and Naomi curled into his side, her breathing gradually evening out. Just as Evan thought she'd fallen asleep, she spoke again. "Evan, thank you for not making me feel crazy." "You're not crazy. You're human. And I love you exactly as you are." The next morning, Mia bounced into their bedroom at her usual ungodly hour, launching herself onto the bed with the grace of a small tornado. "Pancakes! We need pancakes! It's Saturday!" Naomi caught her mid-bounce, pulling Mia into a hug. "Good morning to you too, sunshine."
Morning, Mommy. Morning, Daddy. Can we make the ones with chocolate chips? Evan watched Naomi's face transform at the casual "Mommy," watched years of insecurity momentarily silenced by his daughter's uncomplicated acceptance. Naomi met his eyes over Mia's head, and he smiled, hoping she understood what he was trying to communicate. See? You're her mother. She chose that word herself. You're enough.
They made pancakes together, the three of them crowded in the kitchen, flour everywhere, Mia narrating her elaborate plans for the day. It was ordinary and perfect, the kind of morning that would have seemed impossible 6 months ago in that restaurant on Christmas night. After breakfast, while Mia was absorbed in her cartoons, Naomi pulled Evan aside. I want to formally adopt her. I know we've talked about it vaguely, but I want to make it official. I want legal recognition that she's my daughter too. Evan felt his chest tighten with emotion. Are you sure? It's a big step. I'm completely sure. I want my name on her school forms. I want legal rights to make medical decisions. I want her to know, without any doubt, that I'm committed to being her mother forever. Then let's do it. Let's make you officially mom. They started the adoption process the following week, meeting with lawyers who walked them through the requirements. Since Sarah's parental rights had ended with her death and there were no other legal complications, the process would be relatively straightforward. Still, it required paperwork and home visits and court appearances that stretched over months. Mia was thrilled when they told her. She immediately drew pictures of their family with elaborate labels: Daddy, Mommy Naomi, and me. The distinction of Mommy Naomi gutted Evan in the best way, his daughter creating space for both mothers without erasing either one. The social worker who came for the home visit was a kind woman named Patricia, who'd clearly seen every family configuration imaginable. She interviewed them separately and together, asking detailed questions about their relationship, their parenting philosophy, their plans for the future. When she sat down with Mia alone, Evan and Naomi waited in the kitchen, both tense. What if she says something that makes them think this isn't working? Naomi worried. Mia loves you. She'll tell them that. 20 minutes later, Patricia emerged with Mia skipping beside her. Mr. and Mrs. Brooks, I've completed my assessment. I'll be recommending approval for the adoption. Naomi's hand flew to her mouth. Really? Really? Mia is clearly thriving. She speaks about you, Mrs. Brooks, with genuine affection and trust. She understands the adoption process and is enthusiastically in favor of it. And observing your family dynamic, it's evident that you've created a loving, stable home. Patricia smiled. Honestly, this is one of the most straightforward cases I've handled. You're doing everything right. After Patricia left, Naomi sank onto the couch, overwhelmed. Mia climbed into her lap, sensing her emotion. Don't be sad, Mommy. She said yes. Now you can be my real for always mom. I am sad, baby. I'm happy sad. Does that make sense? Like when Daddy cries at the end of movies? Evan laughed from the doorway. Exactly like that. The court date was set for August, 4 months away. In the meantime, life continued its forward momentum. Naomi had settled into a new rhythm at work, delegating more and leaving the office at reasonable hours. Evan had taken on a few architectural projects, finding joy in creative work he'd abandoned after Sarah's death. Mia finished kindergarten with glowing reports from her teacher about her confidence and creativity. Summer brought long days at the park, weekend trips to the beach, lazy mornings where they stayed in pajamas until noon. They were building traditions: Friday movie nights, Sunday morning farmers market visits, bedtime stories where they all piled into Mia's bed. Slowly, the house stopped feeling like Evan's house and became their house, filled with Naomi's books and Mia's artwork and evidence of their blended life. Rebecca became a regular presence, stopping by for Sunday dinners, taking Mia to the zoo, sharing stories about Sarah that kept her memory alive without making it painful. The tension from the art show had dissipated, replaced by tentative friendship. One evening, after Mia was in bed, Rebecca pulled Naomi aside. I owe you an apology. A real one. Not the half-hearted thing I said at the coffee shop. Rebecca, you don't... I do. I was horrible to you. I said things that were cruel and untrue because I was drowning in my own grief and needed someone to blame. But watching you with Mia these last few months,
Seeing how you've loved her, I realize you're not replacing Sarah. You're honoring her by taking care of the people she loved most. Naomi's eyes filled with tears. Thank you. That means everything. Sarah would have liked you, I think. You're strong and smart, and you don't take crap from anyone. Those were qualities she valued. Rebecca smiled slightly. And she would have been grateful that Mia has you, that Evan has you, that neither of them is alone. I'm the grateful one. They gave me a family when I thought I'd never have one. The two women hugged, and Evan watched from the kitchen doorway, marveling at how far they'd all come, how love and forgiveness could transform even the most broken situations into something beautiful. As the court date approached, nerves set in. Naomi became anxious, convinced something would go wrong, that the judge would see some fatal flaw in their family. Evan spent hours reassuring her, reminding her of Patricia's glowing recommendation, of Mia's enthusiasm, of the life they'd built together. The morning of the court appearance, they dressed carefully. Naomi in a professional but warm navy dress, Evan in his suit, Mia in her favorite purple dress with flowers. Claire met them at the courthouse for moral support, along with Naomi's brother who'd flown in from California. The courtroom was less intimidating than Evan had feared, just a small room with the judge's bench and a few rows of seats. The judge, a woman in her 60s with kind eyes, reviewed their file while they waited. Mr. Brooks, Mrs. Brooks, I've read through your case file and social services recommendation. I also have a letter here from Mia's kindergarten teacher, several character references, and what appears to be a drawing. She held up one of Mia's family portraits. That's mine, Mia said proudly. I wanted the judge to see our family. It's beautiful, Mia. Now, I'd like to ask you some questions. Is that okay? Yes, ma'am. Do you understand what we're doing here today? We're making Mommy Naomi my legal mom. So she's my mom in all the ways, not just the love ways. The judge smiled. That's a very good explanation. And is that what you want? Yes, I love Mommy Naomi. She helps me with my homework and reads me stories and makes me laugh. She's the best mom ever. Well, the best mom I have now. My first mom was the best too, but she's in heaven. But Mommy Naomi is here, and I want her to be my real mom forever. Evan watched Naomi fight tears at Mia's simple declaration. The judge's expression had softened, and she nodded slowly. Thank you, Mia. That's very clear. She turned to Naomi. Mrs. Brooks, do you understand the responsibilities you're taking on? That this adoption will make you legally and permanently Mia's mother with all the rights and obligations that entails? Yes, Your Honor, I understand completely, and I accept those responsibilities gladly. Mia is already my daughter in every way that matters. This just makes it official. Mr. Brooks, you consent to this adoption? Absolutely, Your Honor. Naomi has been an incredible mother to Mia. This is just recognizing what's already true. The judge reviewed their paperwork one more time, then smiled. Well, I don't see any reason to delay. Based on the evidence presented, the recommendation from social services, and Mia's clear preference, I'm granting the petition for adoption. Mrs. Naomi Brooks, you are now legally recognized as Mia's mother. Congratulations. The gavel came down, and Mia shrieked with joy. Naomi burst into tears, pulling Mia into her arms, and Evan wrapped his arms around both of them. Claire was crying, Naomi's brother was applauding, and even the court clerk was smiling. We did it, Naomi whispered. She's really mine. She was always yours, Evan said. Now it's just official. They celebrated with lunch at Mia's favorite restaurant, where their daughter insisted on telling every server that she'd just been adopted and now had the best mommy ever. Naomi glowed with happiness. Her earlier anxieties vanished, replaced by pure joy. That evening, after Mia was asleep, Evan found Naomi in their bedroom staring at the official adoption certificate. She looked up as he entered, her face still showing traces of happy tears. I keep looking at it to make sure it's real, that my name is actually on this document, that I'm legally her mother. It's real. You're her mother. You've been her mother since New Year's Eve when she fell asleep between us and you promised to try your hardest not to leave. That feels like a lifetime ago. In some ways it was. We're completely different people now. Naomi set down the certificate and moved into his arms. Do you have any regrets?
About how we started? About saying yes to that crazy woman in the restaurant? Evan pulled back to look at her properly. Not even for a second. You're the best thing that's happened to me since Mia was born. You saved us, Naomi. Both of us. You saved me too. I was so lonely, Evan. So tired of being valued only for my money. And then I saw you sitting there, rejected for having something that should have made you more lovable, and I thought maybe we could save each other. And we did. We built something impossible. They stood in their bedroom, holding each other, marveling at the journey that had brought them here. From strangers in a restaurant to spouses to parents, all in less than a year. It should have been too fast, too risky, too improbable. But somehow, it had worked. The following week settled into a new normal, the adoption certificate framed on the wall alongside Mia's artwork and family photos. Naomi's confidence as a mother grew, her last lingering doubts silenced by legal recognition. She stopped second-guessing her instincts, stopped apologizing for not being Mia's biological mother, stopped waiting for someone to tell her she didn't belong. One Saturday morning in September, Evan woke to find both Naomi and Mia missing from the house. A note on the kitchen counter read, "Gone to the bakery, back soon with surprises. Your girls." Your girls. 2 words that encompassed everything they'd built. They returned an hour later with pastries and flowers, Mia announcing they'd wanted to make the morning special for no reason except they loved him. They ate breakfast on the back porch, Mia chattering about starting first grade, Naomi interjecting with plans for a family vacation, and Evan sitting back to absorb the simple perfection of it all. "Daddy, what are you thinking about?" Mia asked, catching him in his reverie. "Just how lucky I am. How lucky we all are." "Because we found each other?" "Exactly because we found each other." Naomi reached across the table, lacing her fingers with his. "Best decision I ever made, asking you that impossible question. Best decision I ever made was saying yes. Was it scary when she asked you?" Mia's eyes were wide with curiosity. "Terrifying," Evan admitted. "I thought she was crazy. I thought I was crazy for even considering it. But you did it anyway." "I did. Because sometimes the scariest things are the most important things. Sometimes you have to be brave even when you're afraid." Mia absorbed this with the seriousness of a 6-year-old philosopher. "Like when I was scared to go to kindergarten but did it anyway and made lots of friends?" "Exactly like that." "Then I'm glad you were brave, Daddy, because now we have Mommy and everything is better." Out of the mouths of babes. Evan met Naomi's eyes and saw his own wonder reflected there. They'd taken an insane risk, built a family on the foundation of mutual desperation and impossible hope, and somehow it had worked. Not because it was perfect, but because they chose each other every day. Because they faced fear together instead of running from it. Because they believed that broken people could heal each other if they were brave enough to try. Later that afternoon, while Mia played in the backyard, Evan and Naomi stood at the kitchen window watching her. She was creating an elaborate castle in her sandbox, narrating the entire story to her stuffed animals arranged as an audience. "She's so happy," Naomi said softly. "When I think about how we were all struggling just a year ago, you and Mia alone, me desperately lonely, and now look at us." "Look at us," Evan echoed. "A family that shouldn't work on paper but works perfectly in reality." "Do you think we'll always be this happy?" "I think we'll have hard days, challenges, moments where we struggle. But yeah, I think the foundation is strong enough to weather anything." Naomi leaned her head on his shoulder. "I never thought I'd have this. A husband who loves me for me, not my money. A daughter who calls me mommy without hesitation. A home that feels like mine. I thought those things were reserved for other people. I thought I'd used up my chance at happiness when I married Sarah. That losing her meant giving up on ever having a partner again. I thought Mia and I would muddle through alone, and that would have to be enough. And now? Now I know that love isn't limited, that there's no quota on happiness, that saying yes to you wasn't betraying Sarah, it was honoring the love she taught me by being brave enough to love again." They watched Mia play, watched the late afternoon sun paint everything golden, watched their daughter be exactly what she was, a happy, confident child who knew she was loved by 2 parents who would do anything for her. This was the future neither Evan nor Naomi had imagined for themselves, the life that had started with an impossible question on the worst night and transformed into everything they needed. That evening, they returned to Marcello's, the Italian restaurant where everything had begun. Evan had made reservations for their 6-month anniversary, wanting to mark the occasion by returning to where it all started. They sat at a different table, but the atmosphere was the same. Dim lighting, flickering candles, couples leaning close in conversation. Mia was with Claire for the evening, giving them rare time alone. "Do you remember what you were feeling that night?" Naomi asked after they'd ordered. "Before I approached you? Hopeless? Defeated? Absolutely certain I'd be alone forever." Evan reached across the table for her hand. "I'd accepted that having Mia meant giving up on finding a partner, that I'd spend the rest of my life watching other people have what I couldn't. I felt the same way. Resigned to being valued only for my money, convinced I'd never find someone who wanted me for myself, never have the family I desperately wanted." She smiled. "And then I saw you, looking exactly how I felt, and something clicked, like maybe we could fix each other's impossible problems. And we did. We actually did. We did more than that. We built something real, something that started as practical problem solving but became genuine love." Naomi squeezed his hand. "I love you, Evan Brooks. Not because you solved my problem or gave me a family. I love you because you're kind and brave and an incredible father, because you make me laugh and hold me when I cry and never make me feel like I'm too much. I love you too, for your strength and intelligence and the way you love Mia like she's always been yours, for challenging me to be braver than I think I can be, for asking me that impossible question and refusing to let me hide in my grief." They toasted to impossibility, to courage, to the strange alchemy that had transformed two broken strangers into a whole family. Around them, other diners celebrated their own occasions, oblivious to the quiet miracle happening at the corner table. On the drive home, Naomi was quiet, staring out the window at the passing city lights. Evan glanced over, concerned. "You okay?" "More than okay. I'm just thinking about how different everything is from a year ago. How I was sitting in that restaurant alone on Christmas, watching you get rejected, and decided to take the biggest risk of my life. It could have gone so wrong, but it didn't." "But it didn't," she agreed, turning to smile at him. "It went impossibly, perfectly right." They picked up Mia from Claire's, their daughter sleepy and pliant, full of stories about her evening with her aunt. As Evan carried her to the car, Mia mumbled against his shoulder. "Did you have fun on your date?" "We did, Princess. I'm glad you found Mommy. She makes you happy. She makes us both happy. That's because she's perfect for us, like she was made just to be our family." Evan met Naomi's eyes over Mia's head, and they shared a smile. Not made for them, but chosen. Carefully, deliberately, bravely chosen despite every reason to say no. That's what made it work. Not destiny or fate, but conscious daily decision to love each other through every challenge. At home, they tucked Mia into bed together, a nightly ritual they'd perfected over months. Naomi brushed Mia's hair back from her face while Evan arranged her stuffed animals. "Love you, Mommy. Love you, Daddy," Mia mumbled, already halfway to sleep. "Love you too, sweetheart," they responded in unison, and Mia smiled at the harmony of their voices. In their own bedroom, Evan pulled Naomi close, both of them tired and content. "Thank you," he said into the darkness. "For what?" "For being crazy enough to ask. For being brave enough to try. For loving us even when it was hard. Thank you for saying yes. For giving me a chance when every instinct probably told you to run. For building this life with me." They fell asleep tangled together, and Evan's last conscious thought was gratitude. Gratitude for rejection that had led to connection. For Christmas night and impossible questions. For a woman brave enough to risk everything on a stranger. For a daughter wise enough to make room in her heart for two mothers. For the courage to choose happiness over fear. Months turned into years. Mia grew from 6 to 7 to 8, thriving in school, her artwork becoming more sophisticated, her understanding of their unique family deepening. She never forgot Sarah. They made sure of that, keeping her memory alive through stories and photos and visits to the cemetery on important occasions. But she also embraced Naomi fully, without reservation. without the confusion that might have existed if they'd tried to hide their unconventional beginning. On Mia's 8th birthday, she asked for a family meeting, something she'd seen on a TV show and decided was very grown up. They gathered in the living room with mock seriousness, Mia standing in front of them with a notebook. "I've been thinking," she announced, "about our family story, and I want to make sure I have it right so I can tell my kids someday." Evan and Naomi exchanged amused glances. "Okay, tell us what you think you know." "Daddy and Mommy Sarah loved each other very much and had me. Then Mommy Sarah died in an accident, which was very sad. Daddy tried to find someone new, but kept meeting people who didn't want me. Then on Christmas, he met Mommy Naomi at a restaurant, and she asked him a very important question, and he said yes. Then they fell in love and got married and adopted me, so now I have 2 mommies, even though one is in heaven." "That's exactly right, Princess," Evan said, his throat tight. "But why did Mommy Naomi ask you the question? Why you specifically?" Naomi and Evan looked at each other, silently negotiating how much to share. Finally, Naomi spoke. "Because I saw your daddy getting rejected for having you, and I thought that was the silliest thing I'd ever heard. You're wonderful. Having you should make someone more lovable, not less. And I thought maybe your daddy and I could help each other. He had you and wanted a partner. I wanted a family and couldn't have biological children. We solved each other's impossible problems." "So it was practical at first?" "At first," Evan confirmed. "But it became love very quickly. Your mom, Mommy Naomi, is very easy to love." "Both your mommies are easy to love," Naomi added gently. "Mommy Sarah will always be your first mother, the one who gave birth to you and loved you from the very beginning. I'm your second mother, the one who chose you and your daddy and loved you from the moment I met you. Different kinds of love, but both completely real." Mia absorbed this, then wrote something in her notebook. "Okay, that's what I'll tell my kids, that our family started because someone was brave enough to ask an impossible question, and someone else was brave enough to say yes, and then love did the rest." "That's perfect, sweetheart," Naomi said, pulling Mia into a hug. "That's exactly what happened." That night, after Mia was asleep, Evan and Naomi sat on the back porch watching fireflies dance in the yard. 3 years had passed since that Christmas night, and sometimes Evan had to remind himself that their family had such an improbable origin. It felt so natural now, so right, that he forgot it had started with desperation and impossible questions. "Do you ever think about what would have happened if you hadn't asked me that night?" Evan wondered aloud. "All the time. I think about the courage it took, how close I came to just paying my bill and leaving, how I almost let fear stop me from taking the biggest risk of my life. I think about how close I came to saying no, to walking away from you because it seemed too crazy, too fast, too impossible. But we didn't. We were both brave enough to try. We were desperate enough to try," Evan corrected gently. "There's a difference." "Is there?" "I think desperation and bravery often look the same. We were desperate, yes, but it took bravery to act on that desperation instead of just accepting our loneliness." Evan considered this, then nodded. "You're right. We were brave. Recklessly, impossibly brave. And it worked. Against all odds, it actually worked." They sat in comfortable silence, and Evan thought about all the ways their lives had changed. Naomi had restructured her company, promoting trusted executives, and reducing her own hours so she could be present for their family. Evan had returned to architecture full-time, finding renewed passion in his work now that he had a partner to share the burden of parenting. Mia had blossomed into a confident, creative child who navigated her unique family situation with remarkable grace. They'd created something impossible, a family built not on biology or traditional courtship, but on mutual need and conscious choice. And that choice, renewed every day through small acts of love and commitment, had proven stronger than any foundation they could have built through conventional means. "Evan?" Naomi's voice pulled him from his thoughts. "Yeah?" "If you could go back to that night in the restaurant, knowing everything you know now, would you do it again? Would you say yes to the crazy stranger asking impossible questions?" Evan didn't hesitate. "In a heartbeat. Every time. 1,000 times over. Even knowing how hard it would be, the doubt, the fear, The judgment from people like Rebecca? Especially knowing that, because I'd also know how it ends. With us here, with Mia asleep upstairs, with a family that shouldn't work but does, with happiness I never thought I'd have again. Naomi leaned her head on his shoulder. Me too. I'd ask the question again. I'd risk the rejection and the uncertainty because the reward is everything I ever wanted. They stayed there until the fireflies faded and the night grew cool, two people who'd been broken finding wholeness in each other. Two strangers who'd become family through courage and choice. Two impossible halves that had somehow, miraculously, become perfectly whole. Years later, when Mia was 12 and starting to understand the full complexity of adult relationships, she asked to visit the restaurant where it all began. It had been years since they'd been back, but Marcello's was still there, still serving overpriced pasta in romantic lighting. They sat at a table near where Evan had been rejected and Naomi had asked her impossible question, and their daughter looked around with the gravity of someone visiting a historical site. "This is where our family started," she said. "Right here." "Right here," Evan confirmed. "It doesn't look very special." It wasn't. It was just a regular restaurant. But sometimes regular places become special because of what happens in them. Mia turned to Naomi. "Were you really scared when you asked Daddy the question?" "Terrified. I thought he'd say no. I thought he'd think I was crazy. I almost didn't ask." "But you did." "But I did. Because sometimes you have to be brave even when you're scared. Sometimes the most important things require the most courage. Like when I tried out for the school play even though I was nervous. Exactly like that. You did something scary because it mattered to you. That's courage." Mia was quiet for a moment, then smiled. "I'm glad you were brave, Mommy. I'm glad you both were brave." "So are we, Princess," Evan said, reaching across the table to hold both his wife's and daughter's hands. "So are we." As they left the restaurant that night, Evan glanced back one more time at the table where everything had changed, where desperation had met courage and created possibility, where two broken strangers had asked and answered the question that would define their lives. "Can you be my husband?" Yes. Two words that had seemed impossible then, but had proven to be the most important two words Evan had ever spoken. Not "I do" at the altar, though those mattered. Not "I love you," though he'd said those thousands of times since. But that first yes to a stranger's impossible question. That was what had started everything. Outside, the snow was falling again, just like it had that first night. Mia caught snowflakes on her tongue while Naomi laughed, and Evan stood back to absorb the scene. His family, built from impossible circumstances, sustained by daily choice, made perfect through courage and love. They drove home through snow-quiet streets, and as Evan pulled into their driveway, their house, their life, he felt the same profound gratitude he'd felt on their wedding day, on the adoption day, on countless ordinary days since. Gratitude for rejection that had led to connection, for loneliness that had created courage, for impossible questions that had somehow, miraculously, had possible answers. Inside, Mia went straight to her room to work on homework, already a responsible preteen. Naomi and Evan moved to the kitchen to start dinner, their movements synchronized after years of partnership. They'd hosted thousands of dinners in this kitchen, had thousands of conversations, solved thousands of small problems together. "Happy?" Naomi asked, the same question she'd asked on their wedding night. "Impossibly happy," Evan answered, the same answer he'd given then and every time since. Because that's what they'd built. Impossible happiness. The kind that shouldn't work on paper but worked perfectly in practice. The kind that started with desperate questions and brave answers and grew into something neither of them could have imagined alone. That night, after Mia was asleep and they were curled together in bed, Evan found himself thinking about all the people in the world carrying their own impossible problems. All the people sitting in restaurants feeling rejected and hopeless. All the people convinced they'd never find what they were searching for. He hoped they'd find their courage, their impossible questions, their brave answers. Because he'd learned that sometimes the most improbable beginnings led to the most beautiful endings. That two broken halves really could make something whole. That asking, "Can you be my husband?" to a stranger on Christmas night could transform 3 lives in ways none of them could have predicted. And as he drifted towards sleep with Naomi's steady breathing beside him and Mia safe down the hall, Evan felt nothing but gratitude for the impossible question that had saved them all, for the courage to say yes, for the family they'd built from broken pieces and brave choices. It hadn't been easy. It hadn't been conventional. But it had been real and beautiful and more than enough. It had been everything.